Welcome everyone to the end stream.
Hello, welcome to the
I think we
ENDstream.
had a bit of lag there just at the start. This is the end stream. As you know, we stream on Rumble, Kick, and YouTube simultaneously. So hello to anyone who's watching from any of those platforms, and give us a follow on each channel if you're on those platforms. Subscribe, like, comment down below, and don't forget to join our community on Discord, which won't be available publicly for too long, as we will eventually close it off to members only in the near future. So if you have the opportunity to join it, and you can follow us on x.com as well as Instagram now and be a part of the NTV community.
Yep. I just posted the links in the comments
Great.
for all our, like wherever we're streaming this video, and also our social media.
So yeah, we've decided to return back to our Friday schedule. Only just some updates on that is there will be a new schedule for NTV and ENDstream. We're planning on 2 streams a week, and one will follow the regular schedule as today, 5 p.m. Central European Time on Fridays. And this will be the news round, recapping on the previous week headlines and news. And on Wednesdays, we're planning to do around the same time, 5 p.m. Central European Time, a more chill stream where we discuss topics we find interesting personally. And these can range from anything to conspiracy, corruption, and criminal cases, cultural themes, or anything really, and that myself or Edge particularly want to discuss. We'll also have more focused discussions, and you as a member of our community, you can also bring up any recommendations in our Discord. And then also we have the video schedule, which also will change because it'll be Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. And they'll either be NTV videos or ENDstream clips. So be sure to turn on the notification bell to stay updated if you're on YouTube. And these videos will be released as previously around 6 p.m. Central European Time. So we're still planning on releasing some NTV special videos, and those to be expected are still on their way, such as the video on Palantir, and obviously also one on the implications of AI.
I'm looking forward to them, actually.
Yeah. So yeah, if you haven't checked in the chat, I think Edge posted. Yeah. And I'm hoping everybody's having a decent Friday and start to their weekend. Yeah, but let's start and get right into it, shall we? Into the headlines and current events. And with that, we're starting with the EU. And Germany is floating conscription if volunteer plans fail.
Oh man.
So basically, Germany is considering the reintroduction of compulsory military service if its current voluntary recruitment strategy fails to meet defense needs. And Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has indicated that while the initial approach focuses on voluntary enlistment, mandatory conscription could be implemented if recruitment targets are not achieved. The government aims to have a new military service law in effect by January 2026. So that will be soon. That's right after Christmas. What does this really say? We've heard obviously a lot about the younger generation being anxious and concerned about not wanting to be drafted into the military. This is across the board in the West, from the United States to even in Europe. And as you know, with the buildup of more militarization, especially right now in Europe, and these wars exploding all around and conflicts, there's been a lot of protests and a lot of people who are kind of against that. We had a video, I think, on the previous article. I'm not sure if it can play back. Should we try that?
Which one? On The Economist? For some reason, I can't play it.
Oh, okay, then never mind. We have, but basically, okay, if you can't play it, then it's no problem.
I wonder
Well,
why.
the question is the spirit of militarism, especially in Germany and also beyond Germany, um, whether there is a desire to fight, and it just looks like more of the younger generation and most people, even people from our generation, are kind of worn out with fighting and with war, and so I don't really see this being the right path ahead. Um,
Yeah, I don't
so
like it. I'm not a fan of it.
the context and the rationale for this is obviously the push for reintroducing the conscription, arising from concerns of national defense readiness and evolving security threats in Europe, particularly following, obviously, since 2022, the full-scale conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So Germany suspended its draft in 2011, but has struggled to meet troop targets as defense demands grow. The current military service plan includes efforts to reactivate more reservists to enhance defense capabilities. So that would mean people who previously have training and that are kind of on the list.
Yeah.
And despite the proposal, there are significant challenges. The Bundeswehr, which is the armed forces of Germany, currently lacks the infrastructure to accommodate a large influx of conscripts. There are insufficient barracks, training facilities, and personnel to support this rapid expansion. Additionally, integrating conscriptions would require constitutional amendments. That's a big thing, which would include women, as the current law mandates conscription is only for men. So equal rights there are
Seems like they
necessary.
want everybody on board. That's
Yeah.
not good. It's like
Yeah.
Israel, right, where they have like women in the army as
Indeed.
well. They just
So
want more people.
Yeah. The debate over reinstating conscription has intensified amid growing concerns about national defense readiness, as mentioned, and security threats in Europe. The Conservative Christian Democratic Union, CDU, and Christian Social Union, the CSU, who usually align with one another, have advocated for reintroducing compulsory military service. While the center-left Social Democrats, or SPD, favor voluntary service, which it has been since 2011. The coalition agreement between these parties outlines plans for a new voluntary military service to rebuild the overstretched and steadily shrinking ranks of Germany's armed forces, especially now in light of Chancellor Merz in talks with Prime Minister Starmer and, of course, President Macron, who are big proponents of alongside President Ursula von der Leyen in establishing a new EU defense plan for the European states. Now, we have obviously public opinion on the compulsory service, which is mixed, highlighting the tensions, as mentioned before, between this ultra superstate nationalism and military identity. There was a Forces survey that revealed that only 17% of Germans would be willing to take up arms to defend their country. Now, again, this is in light of what I mentioned, that the newer generation, including ours, are kind of having grown up in a lot of conflicts and wars, especially, in view of what we know about the military-industrial complex and about, corporations and all about the arms trade and all these things. No one is really that eager, so it's not surprising only 17% is still pretty intriguing, but they would only take up arms to defend their country in the event of a military attack. So that's shocking, just so you know. In contrast, a study by the French Ministry of Defense found that 51% of 18 to 25-year-olds would be prepared to fight in Ukraine if necessary to defend France, which is interesting, to say the least. I don't see how that affects France, but yeah, there has been for a long time a large, significant interest of France within the Ukrainian conflict, especially from the Ukrainian side. Germany's consideration of reintroducing this conscription reflects a strategic response to evolving its security challenges. However, the success of this initiative will depend on overcoming significant logistical, political, and societal hurdles. I think particularly those are the main ones, the societal hurdles. And the government's ability to balance defense needs with public sentiment and constitutional constraints will be crucial in shaping the future of Germany's military service model. I think that this is Germany's possible return to conscription, which is a significant step in its bolstering European defense capabilities and EU strategic autonomy. However, this raises the stakes in the current EU-Russia relations too, which requires some careful management to avoid unintended escalation. And at this current time, I guess we have to see also on the international stage, especially with what's going on with the NATO Summit, which we'll talk about. But it does seem currently that there has been a lot more bolstering of this militarization from the EU, especially EU countries like France, the UK, and Germany in particular. And it's mostly been in targeting Russia, obviously, which I don't know if it's really in. What was that? Right interest.
It's the video that we're going to show Germany afterwards. On the Shall I show it?
Yeah, let's have a look.
Urge of bringing back compulsory military service. In a recent interview, Germany's Defence Minister, Boris Pistorius, said the government may have no choice but to bring back mandatory conscription if Germany's new military volunteer scheme fails to meet recruitment goals.
By the way, this video is from TLDR News, and they use a lot of sources from Ground News.
Yeah.
Which is a good site for news.
And it's not just talk. A new bill is in the works, which may be ready by January 2026. So in this video, we're going to have a look at Germany's voluntary military service scheme, why it probably won't work, and whether this might force the return of mandatory conscription.
It will be interesting to know what they present as why it wouldn't work, although there could be, I can imagine already that the main reason is that they're already facing a lot of financial burden and obviously the societal pressure.
Yes, absolutely. I just want to show this graph, this chart. Basically, it shows all the different countries in the European region and what years they ended their mandatory conscription.
Oh, right.
For example, in the UK, it was around 1960. Luxembourg before 1970. Most other countries were mid 90s to mid 2000s.
That's wild. So this is the countries that have abolished conscription.
Yes. So if you think about it, between 20 and 30 years ago, most countries abolished it. And they probably did so for money reasons. If you're not in a war, why would you force people to train? I think it should be people should do it by choice and do it properly.
Voluntary, yeah. But it looks like here, does it show Luxembourg? Because I believe they never had conscription, right? Luxembourg.
Well, apparently they did.
Okay, well, the data is different, I guess.
Okay.
No, I'm going by what we got here as well in our docket, where it shows countries, EU countries of active military conscription, which there are certain countries still that do active conscription. You have actually experienced somewhat with this because you actually did training, didn't you?
Yes, absolutely. I've been in the army and have experienced the thick of it. And personally, my own opinion is that you should have people to volunteer instead of just get anyone to do it. I think you want to do it, and also these people should be trained to the max, and also reward them well for it as well. Not just let everybody in, people who can't or like they need to like pick people. Like if you get, for example, like mercenaries in countries that are off the grid or doing all these like special missions that aren't even like
Right.
from government sometimes. These people are properly trained. These are like hired killer hitman type, like for special missions to go in, to go out. They're not anyone. They're not like any 18-year-old or any 60-year-old. These guys are
Well,
in
they're
it.
experienced, right? They already,
Yeah.
but I think that's the plan, is that they want to build up a new, armed
I think
force.
maybe by numbers. I think it's what everybody's like afraid of, like regarding China, for example, because they just have like such a big population.
Right.
And that's also, I think, why the Indian military is also
They're
very big. And
yeah, they're building
yeah.
up too. But I think it's going to take a while, because if you know history, then you see that like in World War One,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
was like a bunch of kids and also elderly people were fighting there.
was.
And it wasn't only until World War Two, and then following that there was already an active military service that was slowly training people. And it's just that we haven't had the need for that since World War Two, because obviously the EU was set up as a peace project.
Yes.
So as there would not be any need for further conflict or fighting.
But like
but now
sorry.
No,
I just
go ahead.
wanted to say that, like we've mentioned on the past live streams, that the industrial military complex is huge, and there's a lot of companies and governments that can make, or people within the government, to make money off certain deals, like war profiteering, which is pretty
Right.
concerning, because the other people are like making profits off like military equipment and jets and stuff like that, whereas we're going to be pushed like on the front lines of like war. We're just going to be like cannon fodder, and these guys are like playing around with like millions and billions of whatever currency, like euros.
Yeah. Well,
It's
as
just
we've
ridiculous.
seen, they're funneling so much more money into that, as opposed to other social and
Yes.
social projects or programs.
Like
And
instead of like healthcare and education and basic needs, like people are suffering from like they can't pay their heating bills, and
Yeah.
here we are just like talking about like funding war, basically.
I think these are potential threats, and apparently, I don't think we probably need to watch the whole video, because we covered already a lot of what they kind of mentioned. But what's interesting is that the countries which are considering bringing back conscription are not only Germany, by the way, because their reinstatement is, just to clarify, is only if volunteer recruitment fails. That's the plan, and that would be through a new law which was already expressed in January 2026. Sorry. And I don't know how that will go. I believe fundamentally, because most Germans are probably going to like protest, because in reality, the majority of there was the whole thing that after World War II, Germany wasn't allowed to build up its military and all this stuff. And in general, the majority of Germans probably don't want anything to do with this. And they're just thinking like, what's going on now? Like, where are we headed there? Like, this is a bit scary again.
I think people have heard like all the stories like from their grandparents or great grandparents,
Right.
like how much they've suffered, like from all sides, like not just like the Allies, but the Axis as well. And it's like these people didn't decide by themselves to go into war.
Exactly.
And hopefully, like, I don't know, as a human race.
And that's the thing. So I don't really see like most of the younger generation today, let alone our generation, who are very disenchanted and disillusioned with anything to do with war and conflict, being interested in this. Poland is considering some form of limited conscription, by the way. Not a surprise, being that it's a lot now. It's veering off a lot more towards a hard gear conservative movement, and its limited conscription will be that of an expanded reserve training amid obviously the current tensions that they're having with Russia. And then we have Slovakia debating reinstatement and regional security concerns. Sweden reintroduced conscription, which I did not know as well. That's kind of crazy. In
Yeah.
2017, and this is due to
Wow.
security
Okay.
concerns.
I didn't
They're
know.
one of the few that have reintroduced it. And Finland maintains conscription and is strengthening service amid regional tensions as well. So it just looks like this is all pointing in the same direction. Once more. And you have northern Eastern European countries, like Estonia, Latvia,
Yeah.
Lithuania, Finland, Sweden, who tend to maintain or reinstate conscription, often driven by obviously their proximity to Russia and regional security concerns. Now, that looks like it's bolstering potential escalation, unnecessarily so, perhaps, because we have seen for the last couple of decades that there's been, obviously no intent or interest for an invasion. Obviously, the USSR no longer exists anymore. There was a whole agreement, there was a whole procedure, a whole process. This is all out of World War II as well. The whole project of the
with
EU.
Gorbachev and Reagan and.
So again, it's interesting. I can understand wanting to have a military kind of presence for defense, etc. But
it does seem like over the top right now when, like, I don't know, people are trying to make ends meet. Like, are you serious? Like, you want to buy?
Well, that's the other thing. This is a kind of a repeat of like what people were going through, at the turn of the century into World War One. Don't forget, World War One was off the back of the Great Depression.
Yeah.
So you had the Great Depression,
I also like how Germany was like at the end of World War One.
Yeah, they were totally. That was part of the reason why they. They turned into the country that they became because they were completely disillusioned, ruined financially.
Whereas if they were in a better state, they probably wouldn't get into war.
No, probably not. And that's kind of, you have to wonder if this is the writing on the wall, writing on the wall.
Yeah.
Where it's like, because you were just talking about housing prices and stuff. Is this all some sort of some sort of indication here that this is like just fuel to like push towards the militarization process? Because
you also mentioned I just want to say you also mentioned to me once about like a lot of countries like doing construction works and not finishing projects. Like, why are they not finishing like a lot of construction works, like public ones? Like, maybe they're putting money into other things. Who knows? I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but like maybe money is like going into other projects.
Yeah, definitely is. In terms of Western Southern Europe, they largely abolished conscription as far as I know decades ago, but even they are now currently debating a return to, due to the evolving geopolitical tensions. And Germany's debate is particularly notable because obviously given its size and influence as one of the main European states.
Yes. Yeah.
And this push is driven by the military readiness challenges and regional security threats. Again, we're seeing this term being thrown around a lot. It's kind of like the term of democracy, which is like, the threat. What actual threat is there other than actually escalating things, provoking things to the point of nuclear and war, which would be actually a threat, because there has been no threat up until that point. This is it's giving me flashbacks to back when I was young enough in the 80s to remember. We're kind of going back, and it's kind of ironic, but it's giving me flashbacks of the whole Red Scare. So the Red Scare, as you know, was a whole movement back in the 60s, especially through McCarthyism, where everybody was a Soviet spy, everybody was a this and that and that. But this continued all the way up until the 80s, up until like the whole dissolution of the USSR. There was this idea of like, I don't know if you remember any movies from the 80s too, but there was this whole idea of like, there were the Soviet agents.
Oh, of course I do. There was one with Arnold Schwarzenegger, right, with KGBs and.
Exactly. And it just feels like we're we're reliving this in some bizarre sort of recycling.
Yeah, like Cold War II or something like that.
But instead of it being the Soviets, it's it has to be it's Russia.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I am kind of tired of hearing about it all the time. It's like we've heard this since 2016, 2015.
Yeah.
We know, and that was all a bunch of hooey in the beginning, and it just continues to be the same case. It's kind of ironic that given all the other other actual potential threatening countries and or states, I should say, let's say states, who could potentially prove to be an actual threat, right? These are never mentioned, but instead, it's like our direction is always met or being shifted to Russia.
I also want to mention
I'm just
that,
worn out with already.
because before we mentioned Germany, that Germany, aside from its own military, also has companies like Heckler and Co., which produce weapons, and also a lot of countries manufacture weapons based on their blueprints sometimes.
Right.
So you get I don't know, an assault rifle or something, and you get other countries getting the blueprints and
then building them
just building their own weapons, but they need
Right.
to have them licensed or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, I just wanted to point that out, that Germany also has interest in its own companies that sell weapons or blueprints to other countries as well.
I just think my final thought on this, just so we can move on, is just that I just think we were sold a lie, in my opinion, because if the EU was supposed to be a peace project to avert further conflict and stuff, I'm not really seeing that at this point in time. It just feels like it's been some sort of project to escalate things up to a point where it becomes some sort of national state, so to speak, right? And it's literally just going through all the procedures, first the unitary currency, the centralized political body, and now one major defense plan, which is obviously pushing it to become a military industrial complex. And people can say oh, what are you talking about? But the thing is, this was mentioned multiple times and people warned about this, but this is what happens if you go down that route. And unfortunately, I just don't really, we mentioned before, it doesn't really seem like the real people of Europe or that make up Europe, the citizens, right? The average citizens, it just seems like their interests or issues are not being met and heard. And instead, we're just seeing more and more push towards this sort of major, EU, United States type of deal, which previously people used to say, oh, what are you talking about? That's a complete, that's crazy. So if you ask me, we were sold a lie, and because it's far from the fact. How are you going to develop something that you're supposed to say is to avert any future conflicts, and that's why they created it in the first place, but now you're potentially provoking and trying to promote possible future conflicts and such, regardless of how you see it. But anyway, what are we getting into now?
So here we have the EU's ready for a trade deal with the US. It's about the tariffs.
Right. So this is the European Union leaders convening in Brussels to decide their approach to President Trump's threat of imposing it was less before, but then it became 50% tariffs on all EU goods, which will be effective on July 9th, right?
Yeah, it's very concerning. On the one hand, you have they want to make this EU army or different countries within the EU creating armies, but then we have tariffs as well. Like on the other hand, it's like, how are you going to make weapons if there's like tariffs as well? It's going to be even more expensive.
Well, that's how you get the corporations, which are already dwindling, right? Like as we mentioned, like Volkswagen or corporations like Bosch enlisted into producing munitions and weapons. That's the thing, because you're using
they have a tradition of making weapons.
Because it's like you said, right? You just need the blueprints.
Vehicles.
To get the blueprints, there's the factories there, but the factories are empty. They're not they're not getting business, right? Oh, but here you go, military contract, boom. Here's the blueprints. You can build it, right? You've built a car, you can build a tank. So there you go. So this the European Commission, which obviously is led by Ursula von der Leyen, is seeking guidance from EU member states on whether to pursue a swift trade agreement with the US or adopt a more confrontational stance. Currently, EU exports to the US face tariffs ranging from 10 to 50%. In response to Trump's threats, the EU has temporarily suspended tariffs on 21 billion euros worth of US goods, but is considering that's crazy. But it's considering retaliatory measures on up to 95 billion euros. So the European Commission is exploring the possibility of a focused sectoral agreement, particularly in automotive and steel industries. This is something that Trump has brought up.
That's what we just said. Yeah.
Well, and that too, to mitigate the impact of the tariffs. So, of course, some usual suspects, some EU leaders, such as Germany's Friedrich Merz and Ireland's Michael Martin, advocate for a quick resolution to protect jobs and economic stability. Others, like Spain's Pedro Sanchez, who, by the way, is already facing a massive scandal, as we've talked about before, criticize Trump's threats as unfair and are pushing for a tougher response. To be honest, Sanchez, I don't think you're going to be in office long enough, so maybe you should shut the fuck up. Chief negotiator Maroš Sefcovic. Oh, bro, I can't pronounce. Apologies, but sorry. If you have a name that complicated, then to read, then I'm sorry. You shouldn't even be in office either. Emphasized the importance of EU unity and is exploring measures to stabilize tariff rates and any eventual deal. So I guess the outcome of today's discussion is going to shape the EU strategy in ongoing trade negotiations.
By the way, his name was Maroš Sefcovic, I think.
Sefcovic, okay. It's just I couldn't even read it because there's too many things on it. It was too many things. I was like, what is that?
It's letters with sweet Leland. Yeah.
I mean, at this point, I'm sorry. I'm all for trying to respect other ways of, but good Lord, alphanumeric, please, without any. I today I'm in a bit of no tolerating bullshit mood because we've just been handed so much bullshit lately. Have you noticed over the week?
Yeah, I know.
So we've got
hang on. Let's also point this out that
yes, go ahead.
Further, there's more expenses, even more. So we have the issue with the tariffs. We have an army funding military for every country, expenses, and then you get Ukraine asking for donations again.
It's what is it called in the church when you put out the pan or whatever?
Yeah, exactly.
What is that called? It's the same thing.
Wasn't it in the Blues Brothers, when they go to church and they pass the plate around?
Yeah.
For donations, or Coming to America when they go to church.
It's a collection. It's taking collection.
Yeah.
A tithe. It's for tithes and offerings. Yeah. So here we go, passing the collection plate. Anyway,
he's saying 0.25% of GDP for all countries. He's hoping. Now,
but this is the thing. It's just. This is why everyone's sick and tired and fed up, because it's continuous. Housing
look what
prices.
Reuters article also says. It says that they had already secured $43 billion this year.
But why do you need more?
It's like
It's
how much?
never ending. Like and
I
like you
think
said,
maybe he's hoping that the war is going to continue, so he'll never get
this
like,
is
voted
big
out of
business,
office.
dude. This is big business, and I'm sorry, I've got to speak frankly here, but this is the problem. Like you just brought up, housing prices, people can't afford a bloody loaf of bread,
Yeah,
probably
heating, air conditioning,
heating and
water,
everything, and we just
food,
continuously have to. All we hear about is money being
fuel.
funneled for this militarization, weaponization, da 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 da. And
there's
it's like
everything in the Middle East, like increasing the price of
It's-
oil, likely, and it's like
yeah, that's going yeah,
funding
and,
war.
and the average Joe, average Jill, or average person is
Yeah.
getting screwed over constantly. Oh, my money is going to go help. Oh yeah, okay, great. Meanwhile, I'm screwed. Like what the hell? But this is why nobody cares anymore about these things. They're done. They're fed up. And then the other situations where you actually see people who are in worse situations because they literally are starving or they're being completely like screwed over too in terms of their land and houses. Our governments aren't doing enough either about that because they're just like, okay, whatever. It's maddening. This is also maddening because more than half of the Ukrainian population want an end to this. Nobody asked for this. Nobody wants it. And the problem is they just continue to posture this and they continue to promote it. And it's just redundant. It's just tiresome. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of seeing this constantly.
Yeah, it's tiring.
Anyway, let's listen to this. Let's go.
It's just really tiring. Let's check this out. So this is Zelensky calling for NATO allies to invest in production.
And the President of the European Commission to come to the stage.
Of course. Oh yeah, of course, Ursula von der Leyen.
Oh, nice kiss over there. Okay. Yikes. Oh, there's Mertz.
Maybe you can.
No, that's Rutte, right? That's Rutte.
Oh, yeah.
Mark Rutte. We'll
Chief
talk
of
about him
NATO.
later.
And there is no significant Russian weapon today that is produced without components, without equipment or materials from other countries. Sadly, including some from Europe and NATO. Yes, of course. And this must stop. Such components can be found in every Russian missile, in most of their drones, and in military vehicles. And it's not just China. Also, Taiwan and some of these parts come from the European countries and from the United States. And every single component or machine tool delivered to Russia's defense sector helps prolong the war and is a crime against peace. Please, let's make sure that our defense potential and the potential of our partners works for our peace.
Wait,
All right,
hold on.
so-
So he's basically just saying, don't invest there, invest here. It's the same thing. It's business, buddy. That's
It's
business.
all business.
That's
It's
how
all
it
about,
works.
like the governments, the companies that manufacture the weapons. It's all about that.
This is just posturing again. He's basically saying, like, oh, all these countries that invest, but first of all, they don't invest. They just have deals. Every country has deals. And that's the irony. Even America, they do trade deals like with Russia, ironically enough, because they're supposed to be the evil bad guy, right? But they're still doing deals with Russia. They're doing deals with other countries too that they're not supposed to be doing. Everyone's doing deals, and it's all about like, weapons and whatever.
Yes.
So it makes no difference at the end of the day. So I don't know what he's trying to make a point about that. It's just like he's just saying basically, I want more money, so invest in me. It's like, oh,
He
okay.
was also mentioning
To stop the
China and
war.
Taiwan. Like he was reading the script, but like, does he know what he's talking about?
Well, I mean, Taiwan does, because Taiwan produces a lot of chips.
They do the chips, right? Yeah.
And so right now for drone
Microchips.
technology and everything, it probably is being used to some capacity in that.
Okay.
Because he's talking about, that's the thing. You see, you have to unpack exactly what he's saying. You don't have exactly like one thing that is actually investing. He's saying investing. it's not like the country is investing. It's that there's contract deals, right, between different companies that produce the certain things, just like how we get chips from maybe China, for our computers, but those could be also used for drones, so we're supposed to be, China and in like the United States, for instance, they're considered to not really be, on the same side, right? But it doesn't matter. That's what I'm trying to say. This is just nonsense. It's just posturing again.
Yeah.
And then it's all bloviating in the name of defense. But let's be honest, defense is just the double word of, attack. It's just offensive. It's just, again, it's more,
true.
To end the war and instead invest in defense. Well, guess what? You don't end the war by investing in defense. You end the war with diplomacy. You end the war by stopping killing, by just coming to terms and negotiating. That's how you end the war, not defense. Anyway, that was my rant for today. Oh, well, we have an interesting video here. Yeah, so Viktor Orban,
Hungary, right?
He's the leader of Hungary.
So there's an issue about like Ukraine wanting to be part of the EU.
I predicted this after the whole NATO.
Well, no shit. Did you see how he was kissing like Ursula?
I mean, they're considering Georgia as well. Georgia's on the list too. And this is, again, another thing where it just gets all sort of like, at this point, it just gets completely wacky, because it's like, okay, I get it. This is the bigger European project, but it's like, to what point is it really like where you're going to be like, when enough is enough? Like, where are we going to go to? Like, are we going to include also like what, Morocco? We're going to include, I mean, to be honest, it would probably make more sense to include Morocco at this point than Georgia.
It's like Eurovision, like including Israel.
Yeah, it's exactly Eurovision. The Eurovision Song Contest is exactly, that's the future. Australia is going to be part of the EU soon. Just you wait.
Let's hear what he has to say.
You have to be careful with your mouth. There are good day to everyone. We have prepared the public record, and this means that the number of data submitted is 2,284,732. We knew this until now. Of this, there are 2,278,000, which are valid. So, there are some that are invalid. And of the valid ones, those who said that they do not support the joining of Ukraine and the European Union, there are 2,168,431 Hungarian citizens. In total, 95% of the votes were in favor of Ukraine. This is the situation. I came here with a strong mandate. My voice has become more manly. After all, I will speak in the voice of more than 2 million Hungarian people today that Hungary does not support the joining of Ukraine and the European Union. These everyone can gather. In European Union membership, Hungary cannot be included.
I'm sorry,
because in the end, a unanimous decision must be made.
I have to point out the translator of this video. I don't know what the heck was that. That's kind of the weirdest translation ever.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. That came off so bizarre. Oh boy. But yeah.
Let's see the description, okay? Because that voice came from someone else. Okay, so basically Hungary pays 1 million euros daily for EU fines for blocking migrants at its borders.
Right. This has been since the whole refugee crisis. They've been like, Hungary has been one of the major countries since the refugee crisis began, right? That they just were very, very upfront by, okay, no, we're blocking. They built they had a whole fence. They have a whole, thing. This is even before other countries started kind of following, like Poland, etc. They were the first, right? And they even so again, just reporting on what they stated, and this was again during Orban was still in power even since then, right? And their whole stance was just that they were the vanguard of keeping these people out. They were like the safety net, right? Keeping them out, helping Europe. That was their premise, right? Or Orban's premise, right? So But because they did this, the EU penalized them.
Yeah.
Because obviously there was an asylum lobby, right? The policy that was agreed upon, and Orban rejected it. So they were hit with sanctions, and they've been paying for it just because they're an EU member. It's kind of a crazy thing. But there were other countries who criticized this by saying, like, well, how can you determine what another country decides for itself in terms of its national defense, regardless what you think about it, right?
Yeah,
if you think they're being, so it's kind of wild that they've been paying this money. I don't know. And again, this comes up to the point of, like, why people are critical of the EU, unfortunately, because it's like, well, to what degree do our people and our national leaders determine what is for our interest of the people, right? And also they have a right for their self-defense. So this is the scary thing, it's like, oh, so a lot the Brussels lobby gets to determine, that's wrong and that's right. On whose standard? You're not Hungarian, right? Like, if the Hungarian people voted for this guy. And then of course comes the whole thing, because people then say, obviously, oh, but Orban is an authoritarian and this and that. And it's like, well, it always seems to be the case that if it doesn't comply with your interests, then all of a sudden that person's the bad guy, right? And again, I'm not saying I'm taking the side of Viktor Orban or anything. I'm just saying, but it does seem to be a pattern here that, oh, if they don't agree with us, they're obviously the bad guy, so they must be evil. They must be the bad person, Regardless if they could be. I'm not saying that, but it's just, anyway.
Yeah. I also want to point out that, Ukraine always wants to join NATO. And part of this Ukraine-Russia conflict was due to Ukraine wanting to be part of NATO, NATO being next to Russia.
Yeah, it was also the overreach of NATO because it's too close to the Russian borders. Yeah.
Well, to be honest, there's a fine line between NATO and Europe, and that's including America.
Well,
I'm just saying.
At this point, it's very hard to distinguish what is NATO anymore and what is EU, because it just seems like they're converging. It seems like
and Trump was thinking of leaving NATO, and that would just leave the EU being NATO.
Pretty much. I mean, there would be still some other. I mean, there's Turkey, by the way, who are not allowed to be part of the EU.
I know.
Yeah, as well. So Turkey, which has a significant.
But they want to be part of the EU.
They did, but I think they've given up. They don't care anymore. Okay. Turkey is an interesting country too, because Turkey is actually building up to become. It's amassing quite a force. It's going to become quite a force. It's kind of like how India now.
They produce a lot of drones and stuff.
Yeah, but they're going to become a significant force, I think, in the near future, because it's kind of like how India right now is becoming a developing massive force, in terms of militarily, diplomatically, politically.
Yeah.
Well, Turkey,
I would only hope that Turkey and Greece kind of get together. Since they're both under NATO, why,
Oh, they'll never let that
have any conflict.
We know that.
Well, I hope that.
No, I mean, yes. I would hope so.
It's all down to the politicians, to be honest, and not the people.
Unfortunately, because I'm sure that the people don't even care. They just want to get on with stuff and live their life.
In fact, I've met a lot of Turks and Greeks that love both countries that I've visited. And
so I think maybe we get into world news, maybe, or do you want to cover this? Or we can just go over it briefly about.
Very briefly. Let's do this.
Trump could unplug Europe from the internet. Apparently, he can do a lot of things. So
apparently we're at America's mercy.
Right. So if the stream cuts off, you know who to blame. So this is in relation to Trump's internet kill switch and Europe's cloud dependency, and the US cloud giants, which dominate Europe, which are for instance, obviously Amazon, and Microsoft and Google control over 2/3 of the cloud services market in Europe. So, obviously, if for those unfamiliar, basically you use streaming and other services, you're using the cloud services from these different corporations.
I think maybe a lot of websites are hosted on these servers, and even your emails are hosted there.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
yeah,
And that enables, for instance, all these different provisions and services that you can get, like, streaming, and, as you mentioned, like also emailing or websites hosting, basically. So basically, this has always given the US significant leverage, as its laws can compel shutdown or data access even during geopolitical tensions. However, you have to also look at it as, from the bigger picture here. Amazon, Google, and Microsoft don't work in cohesion. They're separate entities that do their own thing and determine their own thing. And I don't think that the president of the United States can really dictate to either of them, like, oh, do this and do that. I mean, it really would have to be some sort of major, I guess, international or national defense crisis threat type thing to get to that point. But I'd highly doubt it. But so, since Trump's return to office, this has amplified Europe's digital vulnerability, which has a heavy reliance on the US. Cloud providers means a single executive decision in Washington could knock out essential services across the EU. I would contest that, because I don't really think the president can just call the shots in that regard.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully not.
But in
kind of like grabbing us by the,
the
everybody's
balls
on their phone. Like, if the internet goes down, I don't know what a lot of people will do. Like,
if the
internet
going down, people will go rioting. They don't know what to do.
Suicide. Like,
let's not go there. But in response,
like
Brussels,
falling down like flies.
In response, Brussels is accelerating efforts to create homegrown digital infrastructures, from certification regimes to a multi-billion euro industrial initiative to safeguard sovereignty in the digital age. All I can say is one thing: that shit ain't gonna fly, ain't gonna work. Sorry, but whatever they're trying to develop is not gonna work.
To be honest, as much as we need them, they need us as well.
Yeah, but like Europe trying to do its own thing, maybe a long time ago they could have done it. But no way, no how. You cannot compete.
Not a chance in hell.
There's no chance in hell. You can't compete. I'm sorry.
It's impossible.
It's just like and not only that. I'm going to be frank. Even if they do something, it's going to be largely, facing so many potholes and problems that it's. I mean, I give you a perfect example. Europe, in terms of internet service providers, it has some of the shittiest internet service providers. Okay.
Yeah.
Except for Lithuania, apparently. So that's the one exception. Compared to the US, when Americans come here, when they're trying to do stuff, whatever, they're kind of shocked because they're like, "What is this? What?" So, because of this delayed digitization, there's no chance, no how that they're going to actually manage, because they have so much to learn, so much to follow through before they can even get to a point of competing. So, again, this is just money being thrown into the fire, in my opinion. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that there couldn't be a possibility of like, equivalent European services, but it's not there. And the infrastructure and the governments, they don't put enough effort into this. So,
to be honest, for certain things, I kind of get like criticism of like the internet in Europe, and the EU has like loads of bureaucracy with all the different laws and stuff, and that's why GDPR was introduced, that we have to like click on all these pop-ups for every single website that we enter, and like nobody even reads the terms. I hate to say it, but it's like we're with zombies, like pressing a button. I don't know if you've seen.
Because people just want to
press a button.
People just want access to the one thing, and then you have to go through all these hurdles. It's redundant and stupid. It's so ridiculous.
Just over the top.
Anyway, well, there's that. So in other news, which is quite interesting, is the European Parliament has initiated legal action against European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Yes, she's becoming a media darling at this point. Over 100. 50 billion euros security action for Europe, SAFE defense fund. Oh, there's that word again. Arguing that the Commission bypassed the EP's legislative authority, EP being obviously the European Parliament. So this was back in March 2025. European Commission rolled out a 150 billion euro defense initiative called the SAFE regulation, designed to help EU countries jointly purchase European-made military equipment. But instead of following the usual legislative route, oh, what a surprise, that includes the European Parliament, the Commission invoked Article 122 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the EU. Whatever. I mean, maybe we can look that up exactly. I'd be curious to know exactly what that stipulates. The Treaty on the Functioning of the EU.
It says now, like.
Okay. This rule typically is used for economic emergencies like during the 2008 financial crisis or COVID-19. Well, this legal shortcut meant the Parliament was completely cut out of the decision-making process, which didn't sit well with many MEPs. Well, no surprises there.
So like, to understand this better, we have the European Commission and you have the European Parliament, but the European Commission completely overruled the European Parliament, and now the European Commission is being sued. Is that what I understand?
Particularly, I think it's Ursula von der Leyen. Because she's the president.
On the 24th of June, so 3 days ago.
Yeah.
The European Parliament's Legal Affairs Committee overwhelmingly voted to take the Commission to the European Court of Justice. And the complaint is that by bypassing Parliament, the Commission violated the EU treaties and undermined democratic oversight. So the Parliament insists it should have been involved, especially in such a massive spending plan. Here we go again. It's not just about procedure. It's about safeguarding the balance of power between the EU institutions. So we have like all these different institutions, and it's like some need permissions from others, but others are like taking initiative without asking the proper authorities.
Well, there you go. Because if they see fit to, because it's all, this is all kind of centralization of power, coming to a head. And it's basically what many people have warned about, in the past, in the basis of this whole European project, unfortunately, where, now we're just getting too political, too bureaucratic, and there is no accountability. And there you have it. So this is exactly like where there's no transparency in relation to this. Stuff gets done, and Okay. I think we have some. Well, no, we talked about the background. So you mentioned the legal challenge already. But the key points of this, right, of contention, right, are there's this democratic oversight, right? The EP, European Parliament, argues that the Commission's actions circumvented the established legislative process, and that's a pretty big no-no, right? This is depriving the Parliament, which, by the way, okay, people are maybe getting a bit confused here, but the Parliament still has. It's a body of elected officials, by the way, where the European countries or states, right? It doesn't matter, like France, Germany, where the citizens of those countries can actually vote and choose for the people that are representing still the countries in the Parliament. So these are the MEPs, okay? So that's what the Parliament is made up of. But that's where it ends. And that is the problem, because there have been MEPs in the past. I can mention one name that comes up, Nigel Farage. But love him or hate him, but he was right. But there have been many MEPs in the past, right, who kind of brought light to this, because they said, well, we were elected by our people to be here, to represent our people here. But you guys, and that's what they mentioned. They meant there's all these other levels, like the European Commission, the president, etc. They're not elected by the MEPs. They're not elected by, and this is the problem. So there's already been oversight for a long time. So the fact that now they're, starting to, criticize the Commission over this, I don't know. I just think it's kind of funny because this has been the case for a while. But yeah, so they circumvented the established legislative process, depriving the parliament of its rightful role in scrutinizing and approving significant financial instruments. And then, of course, there's the key point of institutional balance, because critics, including those from the Socialists and Democrats group, they assert that the Commission's approach threatens the institutional balance of the EU by consolidating power within the executive branch. Ho, ho, ho. This is exactly what people like Farage were warning about, because that is the problem, right? This is not unlike, for instance, what people have declared or claimed, for instance, like, which is different because the United States the United States has a good function, right? But this is exactly like what people have always been, claiming, that President Trump is going to be this dictator. But the problem is he can only do so much. You understand? He can write executive orders, but there's a reason for why you have the Congress, right? The Congress is there to prevent that regardless. So, and in this case, what we're seeing here is a bit of a flip, right? In what's happening. The Commission is kind of like the executive, branch, and then you have the Congress being the Parliament, the European Parliament, right? So we have, but yeah, so von der Leyen is kind of in the crosshairs right now, because, she's been around, she's been all around the place recently, involved in a lot of things, and the EU has been having already some difficulties with transparency. Now it's being kind of criticized or chastised because of this push for militarization. All of a sudden, funneling the money in that and not in the other, what other people deem as more necessary issues, or so in May of 2025, the EU's General Court ruled that Commission President Ursula von der Leyen must release her 2021 text messages with Pfizer's CEO about vaccine deals. We touched on this, right, in a previous stream, calling the Commission's refusal to preserve them unjustified. The video explores 3 possible outcomes: full disclosure, a legal appeal to delay release, or a limited redacted publication. I'm going to go with the latter. I think it's going to be a limited redacted publication for sure. Yeah. With ongoing investigations by the European Public Prosecutor and other legal actions in Belgium, France, and the US, the case could have major implications for transparency and accountability in the EU. Ho, 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 here we go.
Yeah. Let's have a look at
this exactly how she negotiated with Pfizer.
Yeah.
Let's play the video. I was just going to say this.
Text messages during the COVID-19.
It's a running gag at this point,
But let's rewind a bit to explain what's going on. Back in 2021, Europe was desperate for COVID-19 vaccines, and Ursula von der Leyen, as president of the European Commission,
shall we go with the 3 scenarios?
She negotiated a deal with Pfizer, Europe's biggest vaccine contract, and she did it partly over text messages. Yes, actual SMS messages between her and Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla. Now, this deal was massive. By August 2023, the Commission had secured up to 4.6 billion vaccine doses at a very considerable price, with around 71 billion euros worth of contracts. Wow. And here's the problem.
Like, they're throwing these numbers as if it's, nothing.
I mean,
that's a lot of zeros.
At this point, it's like, a billion here and a billionaire. Okay. But let's see.
Asked to see those messages under EU transparency rules, the Commission said they were lost. Gone. Super suspicious. And this obviously sparked outrage.
What does that remind you of?
Answers. Transparency watchdogs raised outrage. MEPs demanded answers. Transparency watchdogs raised alarms. And the New York Times actually sued the Commission in the Court of Justice of the European Union. That's how serious this became. Fast forward to now, and the General Court, the lower court within the Court of Justice of the European Union, has ruled against the Commission. Completely. The judges said the public has a right to know how this deal was made, and that includes von der Leyen's text messages with Pfizer's CEO. So, what happens next? Well, we see 3 possible scenarios. Scenario number 1. The Commission miraculously finds the texts
Oh.
and releases them, which
How?
brings us to two possible outcomes.
That when
1A,
hell freezes
the
over.
messages are pretty harmless.
They'll
Some
never
of the
get
heat might
them.
die
I mean,
down,
she's
but
like
the damage is
the-
done. People will still
Oh.
ask why it took years to release them and whether something was being covered
Well,
up.
let's be
Even
quite
if
frank.
the texts are clear,
the texts
the
are
delay
not that harmless. You're talking about, what was it, 71 billion euros?
Billion, yeah.
Whenever that much money is involved, it doesn't matter what type of deal it is. It could be whatever, but those texts are not harmless. Let's be frank.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Let's be, come on.
looks super
See what else
suspicious.
there is.
But worse is option 1B. The texts are damaging. They could show that von der Leyen personally negotiated
Sup,
vaccine
Ursula?
contracts, got a little
Negotiate.
too cozy with Pfizer, maybe even came under pressure from them, or completely
Why
sidestepped
now I
formal
sell
EU
elsewhere?
procurement rules.
FD
None of
rules.
that looks good for her. She could face serious political fallout, public
They would obviously be
backlash,
damaging,
fresh
let's be
investigations,
honest.
and
Just
cannot
already
be
hiding.
recovered. This will then result in a different kind of scandal. And yes, there is the nuclear option, where
Fines.
MEPs could
Who's
vote
gonna pay
von der
for
Leyen
them?
out of office. And
Parliament
this brings us to our final
investigation,
scenario.
and
The Commission
what?
appeals the ruling. It didn't think of.
This, by
Here's
the
what I
way,
think.
whenever
This
there's
is not a-
fines, whenever there's, because this is what gets to me, which actually is super annoying. Like, there's a parliament investigation, or like, when you have in the United States, there's these congressional hearings and investigations too. This all comes out of the public purse. This is all paid for by the public, and it's just wasting the public's money.
Exactly. Like all these procedures and courts and stuff, and like the parliament is gonna like
They never get anything.
investigated.
You
Exactly.
don't get
And
what you want at the end.
like over here, the third option, commission appeals, delay verdict and buy time, and it's just wasted money
ding,
on
ding, ding,
procedures.
That's the ticket. That's the one I'm willing to bet. That's the one.
And tell you what, and to buy time, who knows what other deals they're gonna do in the meantime.
Exactly. That's the unfortunate reality.
They'll probably need
Hate
to make
say it.
money from elsewhere, like to pay this well, our money.
I hate to say it, but that's the most likely outcome here. That is, yeah.
All right.
Well, Ursula, I tell you, it's more and more turning out to be like she's the leader of the Spectre organization from James Bond because of the octopus, and her name is Ursula. Like we mentioned this as well before.
Yeah, like from The Little Mermaid, right?
Yeah. To be honest, she's not too far with that hairstyle. She's not too far off from that. You know, she's just not as large, let's say.
This one, right?
There you go, Spectre from James Bond. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Anyway, can we? I think maybe we'd take a little short break.
Yeah.
And then we'll head into we're gonna head into the roller coaster that is, of course, because we need to do this kind of like chronologically here, because a lot happened, right? All involving Trump, Israel, Iran, and it's all a bit like, what the heck. So I think that we'll take a little break and get into that. That'll be interesting.
Yeah,
we've already discussed a lot in regards to it previously, but we want to just give some updates. We got a lot on it, but we're gonna try to cover this as succinctly and give our own. Oh, thank you. I've just been provided coffee. Lovely, Sam.
It's gonna be a good stream after the break. That's for sure. You're gonna get your energy up.
I thought I already had my energy, but okay.
Yeah, well, even more,
Yeah.
But so yeah, we have a lot to talk about, the whole Iran-Israel conflict and stuff.
The updates for that, yeah. And then I think after that, we're gonna go over briefly the NATO Summit, show some highlights from that, some interesting stuff, and just looking at here now. What's next? Then we got some interesting science tech stuff, and hopefully we can wrap up with and we have some finance stuff too. And hopefully we can wrap up with the reactions. We have a reaction segment where myself and Edge are just going to look at a couple of different things, and
some interesting video.
Yeah, and just give our own views and opinions. So for now, we'll just take like a quick break, come right back.
And before we go on break, I just want to remind everyone to like check us out. We're on YouTube, Rumble, Kick. Please follow us on Instagram, Discord, X. Are we on anything else? I think that's it.
No, that's it. I'll post it again in the chat. Boom. There we go.
So yeah, we'll be right back after the break. We'll take about 5 minutes.
Yeah, this is a good opportunity for anyone to like take a little toilet break or top up on a beverage.
Yeah.
Get a snack. Maybe also check up on your investments and stuff, because who knows where the money's going at this stage.
That's for sure.
Anyway, yeah. All right, we'll be right back, folks.
Okay.
Welcome back from the break. Hopefully everyone is still, whoever's tuned in is still with us. So everyone's fully caffeinated.
Yep, that's for sure. I actually got some water because I had like enough coffee.
Hydration is the most important, especially now because it's summer, and you know that this summer is it's a wacky summer. The weather. We should probably do like a weather segment. Someone actually proposed, like, I want to do the weather. But anyway, let's get right into it with what's going on. So President Trump addressed the nation following coordinated U.S. and Israeli strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear sites, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, declaring the operation a spectacular military success and claiming the facilities were completely and totally obliterated, his words. He warned Iran that any retaliation would be met with overwhelming force and said the strikes marked a decisive moment for peace. Though leaked U.S. intelligence suggested the damage may only delay Iran's nuclear efforts by months. Trump also compared the action to historic bombings that ended wars, insisted enriched uranium hadn't been moved before the strikes, and signaled openness to diplomatic engagement, while Democrats raised concerns in Congress over the lack of authorization and disputed the president's obliteration claims. Leaked intel and experts say it might only delay Iran's nuclear program, as mentioned, by a few months. And meanwhile, Iran downplayed the strike, calling it just a slap. I guess a slap on the wrist. The Pentagon praised the pilots, while critics warned it could lead to serious fallout and questioned if Trump had, again, the authority to launch the attack without Congress. This is always an issue of contention. And actually, this is kind of like what we were talking about before. You know, how I mentioned, like how a president can't declare war or enter war, or even without Congress's approval.
Absolutely.
Which is kind of like what Ursula von der Leyen kind of
with
more or less did.
the commission and the parliament and stuff.
Yeah.
So here is like right after the bombing, like the B-2 bombers bombed like Fort Dow and some other like supposed nuclear sites and stuff. So this is Trump being confident.
And Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built.
I'm not gonna lie, he looks sharp
destructive
here.
Enterprise.
Like
our objective
he
was
has
the destruction
JD Vance
of
on the
Iran's
left,
nuclear enrichment
Rubio,
capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
So, yeah. So, not gonna lie, he said that they're completely obliterated. And they did release some pictures of like Fort Dow, like before and after. Now,
do we have some of these?
Let's just keep going on. Let me just see. I'll find it right now.
No problem. We can play it though in the meantime, or
it's okay. I have a picture right here.
Oh yeah, okay. Okay.
These are satellite pictures, and let me just like try to enlarge this.
I mean, you can see a kind of noticeable difference, I guess, but it's
it looks all blue basically. I don't know why it's all blue, but apparently like there are some holes here. I don't know if you can see my mouse cursor on the bottom right.
Yeah, I can see
so
it just looks like a different hue was added to it or something.
Yeah, like probably these, like everything was probably obliterated. Like there's I mean, the mountains were dark before.
That's like a building there, right? Is that a building?
So yeah, here is like different bases and stuff, but these are the outside ones. Like they're claiming that the bases were like underground. Now the thing though is that on our like ENDstream, the day before they actually bombed these places, like we were talking about B-2 bombers like striking different nuclear manufacturing sites within Iran.
That's true.
And we were talking about, Trump isn't really taking a stance, and he said, give it a couple of weeks and we'll decide then. But during that time when they said we'll do it in 2 weeks, they had already sent the B-2 bombers and stuff to go there. Now the thing is though is that if we knew that the B-2 bombers were going to go there, and we talked about this on the live stream before they actually hit these sites, like as sure as hell the people over there knew about this. Now there are different sources online which state that there were trucks and stuff likely moving the uranium, the nuclear stuff onto these trucks outside, and maybe they moved them elsewhere. And this is why a lot of sources are saying, like online, or people criticizing Trump, did you really like destroy all the nuclear stuff? Now, what I was worried about on our live stream was like a bomb hitting a nuclear bomb, and what would be the effect of that.
Right. Because you said something about like if it's that deep underground, what if there's like like the impact, like will it blow up? Would it have some fallout? I don't know. Also, not to mention the seismic activity that could result from that.
Like underground. And people were having like legitimate questions. I mean, some were probably like accusing him, like on the other parties. But if Iran actually had uranium nuclear WMDs, weapons of mass destruction, what if they didn't get rid of them completely? I don't know. So basically your thesis here is that they then were destroyed. Well, that's what Trump is saying, that everything is
saying,
under the rubble, that people can't get to it and stuff. But what if they did extract it?
I mean, The thing, what I've learned, at least, especially with Trump, because he's always been someone like this, like he'll say something, but he's always got like he's already planned it, right? He's been always a big proponent of like saying one thing, but not giving too much information, because he doesn't want basically whoever it is to know what steps he's going to take. He's always been saying that, which is kind of funny because he got upset with Israel over their strikes, and he got upset with Zelensky over their covert operations, with their strikes, and he wasn't informed, right? So, but basically, it's kind of a page out of his book, because he's always been a big proponent of that. Like, well, of course, I'm not going to tell you like what my actions are.
Exactly. I mean, say for example, they had to do another mission to like get nukes from somewhere else, as if he had like let the reporters know.
Right,
like
and
they'd have to carry it out, and then he would tell the world. Or
so you posit a good point here. The question is ultimately based on what Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, said back in March, is that if they actually had capabilities for nuclear weapons, and given the intelligence they had, apparently they didn't have. However, she did change her tune later down the line. I think we cover that. Yeah. We do cover this. This is such a bizarre, this could be a whole soap opera, because the reality is it's such a bizarre weaving of like so many different aspects in this whole
Tulsi
case.
Gabbard is the chief of national intelligence in the States. Yeah. And initially she said that they don't have any, like Iran doesn't have
capabilities for nuclear weapons.
Or at least the States doesn't have proof that Iran has
whereas Trump was saying she's wrong.
Like manufacturing.
So where was he getting his intelligence
but then
from?
I think she changed her tune and said that they do. So it's a bit confusing. Like what is real, what is not?
Yeah. But following this, right, we had Pakistan condemning Trump for bombing Iran a day after recommending him for a Nobel Peace Prize. Which is interesting to say the least. Pakistan of all places.
Pakistan, which is also a very like Muslim country like Iran. Before the US bombed these nuclear sites, Pakistan was like, let's give him a peace prize. He's not bombing anything.
This was also not to mention right after the whole situation Pakistan had on the border with India, by the way. It's kind of a weird turn of events as well. Like
it is.
So
to be honest, Trump would have liked a peace prize, like Obama. Obama got one for not doing anything, and Obama said, I don't know why you're giving it to me, but I'll take it. And I think $1 million comes with that as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Trump has said that he deserves it, but let's wait and see, because still, as we mentioned before, I don't know if really everything that he's doing at this current point is really helping. But Iran's parliament has voted to close the strategic Strait of Hormuz following these strikes in retaliation for the recent U.S. airstrikes on its nuclear sites. And this move is aimed at signaling a strong political resistance. Though the decision is non-binding and final approval rests with the country's Supreme National Security Council and Ayatollah Khamenei, the strait is vital, carrying around 20% of global oil and gas. Yeah, we mentioned this in a previous ENDstream. You brought this up.
Yeah, it's at least 20%, and that impacts like Chinese manufacturing as well.
Yeah.
And it's pretty scary, like what impact it could have on oil prices.
Globally, right?
And everything else that comes with it, like snowballing.
Yeah, and like this closure, even as a threat, has basically sparked the sharp rise in oil prices because of like predictions already, and the serious concern among global leaders. So while Iran may use this as political leverage, again, what does that remind you of who? President Trump, right? Analysts stress that a full shutdown could backfire economically on Iran and provoke international military and diplomatic backlash. You have to look at it from this perspective where it's like, Iran has certain cards on the table, right? And so they have to work with what they got. It's not a question of like taking the side of Iran. I'm just saying this is one of their cards. So obviously they're going to play that card. They're going to say, well, you know what? Okay, you're coming at us and da-da-da-da. well, we're going to close that because sanctions, we're going to close. Just out of the only thing out of interest with this, in my view, is like, why didn't they pull this card earlier when they were getting all the sanctions being dropped on them? Because that would have made more sense. Why now?
Yeah, you would think.
So again, it shows you like, is this like, at the end of the day, the interest always lies on the power brokers and always the people who are actually benefiting, I should say, from making money and all these deals, especially oil. And oil is very strong in terms of like within the arms trade dealing as well and all this stuff. So.
Yeah, and trade routes as well. Like, for example, those pirates like blocking.
Oh, right. Yes. The pirates, the Houthis. And what is this? We have here a video.
So this is the
Strait of Hormuz.
And of global liquefied natural gas flows through as well. Most of it goes to Asia, including China, India, Japan, and South Korea. If disrupted, it could send oil prices soaring and rattle the global economy. But here's the twist. Iran also depends on the strait to export oil, mainly to China, its biggest buyer. Closing it would hurt its own economy and risk alienating key allies.
It goes both ways.
And the thing is,
try to close these.
We did mention that China is very, very concerned because Iran is a big player right now in trade, in a trade route, and specifically to the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, which is China's big plan. So this is why China obviously is going to have their own vested interests here, not only with the Strait of Hormuz, but in general with Iran, what's going on, because Iran is a crucial component to that initiative, So, and if again Iran, and this is the issue that many people have brought up, because obviously Iran has been always an issue raised as the next place, from the United States that they're going to target. So obviously China and probably Russia and other countries, right, like even India, they're going to be a bit maybe concerned, because if let's say Iran comes into the sphere of the American grasp, which is what has happened with a lot of the Middle East, like Iraq and so forth, that means America has complete control. And we already know what Trump has said.
The US actually wants the Strait of...
No problem. Yeah. Trump has stated that he never wanted the Iraq war, he was against it, but they should have taken the oil. So this, saying such things like this, the other global leaders, they're going to be taking notes and they're going to be thinking like, wait a second, is this part of their plan? They want to basically, take Iran, and then they want to take the oil. They want to take, all this. So they're going to monopolize it. So obviously this is how other global leaders, these other nations, right? They're going to start looking at this. So obviously China is going to have a vested interest in a major concern, not only China, but I would say also like Russia and other countries, because they're seeing this as like, is this just more proliferation of the American, grip within the Middle East, for resources? So,
and there could be a lot of interest, like oil politics. So if the price of oil goes up, then American oil companies that, let's say, extract oil from, let's say, the Middle East, like if their oil prices go up, they could make more money. Now, it depends. Let's have a look at the video.
Strait of Hormuz to be blocked. Sounds crazy, right? If Iran blocks the strait, who gets hurt the most? China and Europe. Let's start with Europe. Before the war in Ukraine, Europe relied heavily on cheap oil and gas from Russia. But after sanctions, it was forced to shift toward the US and the Middle East. Today, around 18% of Europe...
Oh my God, it's just like, for any European who's watching right now, it's like, if it wasn't bad enough that the Ukrainian conflict already caused gas prices and stuff, like now you're going to hit by the oil price.
It's like the cherry on the cake.
Every European watching this is going to be like, oh my God, this is what we have to look forward to.
What is going on?
Europe's oil and 15% of its LNG comes through the Strait of Hormuz. If the Strait of Hormuz is blocked, Europe is in trouble. No Russia, no Middle East. Only one option left for Europe is the USA. Now let's look at China. Nearly 50% of its oil and 12% of its LNG flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Yes, a blockade would hurt China, but China still has Russia, pipelines, land routes, and long-term deals. So ask yourself, if the Strait of Hormuz is blocked, who suffers more? China, temporarily. Europe, completely. That's exactly what the US wants. Because the day that Strait is blocked, Europe won't just lose oil, it might lose its independence it will be fully dependent on the USA. The US...
So this could be the longer-term plan, right? Because already has been stated, especially by Trump himself, that they can become energy sufficient, right? Energy sufficient. They don't have to be energy dependent. So they can be. That's why they want to frack. They have enough. They have the capabilities, right, to be dependent on themselves. Yes. They don't have to be even dependent on Saudi oil or stuff like that. So, yeah. At the end of the day, is this a long-term plan to bring again dependency for Europe? And then it's like, you know, this is crazy. It just goes to show you that like what is Europe like? I mean, there have been.
What are we doing?
I do have to say though, there have been European leaders though who have criticized the attacks on Iran. They have brought this up.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it's like a monolithic, you know, overview. But the thing is, it does feel like all these pieces are being shifted into play right here. And so Europe, who essentially is promoting this image of becoming more independent, separating from its entanglement with, you know, the United States because of the tariffs and all this stuff and yada, yada, yada. But realistically, it's just wanting to become a vassal state once more of the big American project, you know?
Yeah.
So, but one thing to note I wanted to mention is that it's not only oil, it's also natural gas, which is a key route, the Strait of Hormuz, which it exports especially from Qatar, which is, I think I mentioned in the video, the largest LNG exporter. The global trade impact, as we mentioned, the disruption in the strait can cause significant spikes in global oil prices. Obviously, we mentioned that, and threaten energy security. And it's not only China, by the way. This also affects India. The video didn't mention India, but it would also affect India, Japan as well, but mostly, obviously, European countries. And yeah, so in short, we see that this is a vital artery for the global energy market and a focal point right now for geopolitical strategy. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out right now. So what happened next? Okay. We already talked about how. Okay, and then so there was a follow-up, right?
Yeah, after the B2 like strikes on these like key nuclear manufacturing factories, let's say in Iran.
Yeah.
There was retaliation from Iran.
Yeah, so this was let me just double check. So it was June 24th when I'm just double checking. Oh no, okay, no, that's later. That comes after. No, so yeah, then there was a retaliation from Iran, who striked against U.S. airbase in Qatar. Which is interesting because we were just mentioning how Qatar is one of the key exporters for the, you know, the LNG, LNG export for, you know, natural gas. And
but like Trump downplayed it as well. He said something like, "Oh, you know, nobody was hurt in any of these bases, and our army, like service people, will get over it."
We have a video of this, actually. I think, in fact.
Let me have a look.
It's this one, yeah.
Is it this one?
Yep. Just the beginning, the breaking news point.
But it's not Trump like talking about it, though.
No, this is just, it gives a little just at the beginning.
We have breaking news we want to interrupt right now with. Apparently, Iran is launching some retaliatory attacks. Fox News is covering that live. Let's just dip in for a few minutes and hear what they have to say.
Dip in.
The wire right now through Reuters, Iran's top security body tells Qatar this action does not pose any threat to our friendly and brotherly neighbor Qatar, making it obviously very clear that this is a targeted attack on the U.S. base only. Jennifer.
Well, that suggests to me, and again, if the Israeli intelligence is correct, and it's 6 ballistic missiles, those ballistic missiles would be GPS guided, and they would know where the U.S. airbase is, Al Udeid. It was surprising to me earlier today when we heard about the intelligence that Iran was planning to strike Qatar because of their close relationship and the mediating role, the important mediating role that Qatar has played between Iran, its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and others with Israel and the United States. So I would not expect for a willy-nilly raining of missiles down on the people of Qatar or
yeah. So
this was more so probably a sign of retaliation against Qatar. It's funny, like the Americans always pronounce the thing is countries different. Qatar.
Yeah, who knows how
I
it's
say
really
Qatar.
pronounced.
I say Qatar, but it's like Americans say Iran instead of Iran or whatever.
Yeah, but it might be Qatar. Like, who knows?
But in any case, this is clear. It's a clear sign that they're retaliating, and President Trump and America was not fazed so much by this.
Yeah, I think after the B-2 bombs like were launched and stuff, and Trump like went on the media saying that that's the end and now it's the time for peace. Then probably Iran did the attack on the American base, but then there was.
Are you talking about when he says no? I think with the ceasefire though. Yes, it was soon after that. However, because we have a chronology of this.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But before we do that, just to highlight, because we were mentioning Tulsi Gabbard. So this was Tulsi Gabbard on Iran's nuclear. Just a reminder of what she said, right? And then we have, it's gonna cut to like when she talks actually. So in March 2020,
national.
She gets all the intelligence basically. And they had concluded that
the IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003.
So there you go. So this is what she testified to. I think it was a Senate hearing.
And now she's saying, sorry. Yeah, but she's saying that they have intelligence then afterwards.
Right, and that's the next thing. And I just want to mention, in 2003, what she's mentioning is that Ayatollah Khamenei suspended Iran's nuclear weapons program primarily due to a mix of international pressures and the fear of U.S. military action, because that was already when they were ramping up, right? This was right after 2003, don't forget, because of the Iraq war.
Guy tried.
Yeah. So this was when he suspended Iran's nuclear weapon program. And also because of the fall of Saddam Hussein. So at that point, that's when they dropped it. And there was no intelligence otherwise to state. The U.S., and this is from the U.S. National Intelligence Estimate of 2007, which stated in high confidence, mind you, that Iran halted its nuclear weapon programs in late 2003. So that's what Tulsi Gabbard is going back. But here we go. Now,
this is from CNN 6 days ago, and this is Trump saying that Tulsi Gabbard was wrong.
Europe, they want to speak to us.
Let's get straight to CNN's chief White House correspondent, Caitlin Collins. Caitlin, there's about 15 different ways I can take this.
They cut it out.
It should be there, I think. At the beginning, perhaps. Wasn't it at the beginning?
No, it's not. Let me just find it real quick.
But in short, basically what happened was that he just said, there you go. Yeah.
What intelligence do you have that Iran is building a nuclear weapon? Your intelligence community has said they have no evidence that they are at this point.
Well, then my intelligence community is wrong. Who in the intelligence community said that?
Your director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
She's wrong.
What intelligence do you have that Iran is building a nuclear weapon? Your intelligence community has said they have no evidence that they are at this point.
Well, then my intelligence community is wrong. Who in the intelligence community said that?
Your director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
She's wrong.
this beggars the question, like, where's then what intelligence is he going by? Because obviously he has to go by the advisory of his director of national intelligence.
Yeah.
But then later on, Tulsi Gabbard hit back, and we have an exact timestamp for that on the video.
Yeah.
Where she backs Trump's claim, which made a lot of people confused, because you had people like Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon. These were big Trump supporters, and they're big within his circle, specifically in helping him not only the first term, Steve Bannon, and who was an advisor, but also Tucker Carlson in the second term, helping in his campaign to promote him. We're highly critical, obviously, of Trump's position in all of this. Yes. And also in regard to what Tulsi Gabbard said. So it's kind of a bit bizarre. You got the
here. Should I just play the clips of Tulsi, like when she speaks?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Produce a nuclear weapon within weeks to months if they decide to finalize
the and defenses during the Gaza conflict. Iran has developed and maintains ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and UAVs, including systems capable of striking U.S. targets and allies in the region. Tehran has shown a willingness to use these weapons, including during a 2020 attack on U.S. forces in Iraq and in attacks against Israel in April and October 2024.
Right.
Iran's cyber operations and capabilities also present a serious threat to U.S. networks and data. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program. In the past year, we've seen an erosion of a decades-long taboo in Iran on discussing nuclear weapons in public, likely emboldening nuclear weapons advocates within Iran's decision-making apparatus.
But hold on.
Iran's enriched uranium stockpile.
Yeah, what's that?
Because she's referring now to the uranium stockpiling, which has the potential. Go back to the tweet at the back. It's where you were at the front, because where she tweeted. No, you had it at the beginning of the video.
Yeah, give me 1 sec.
Yeah, there you go. Wait, you just missed it there, back. There. Yeah. So in this tweet, she says, the dishonest media is intentionally taking my testimony out of context and spreading fake news as a way to manufacture division. America has intelligence that Iran is at the point that it can produce a nuclear weapon within weeks to months if they decide to finalize the. And so this is where I think it's a link, but I think the picture is like basically finalize their enrichment of uranium, basically.
Yes.
But it still sounds a bit odd, because
it does.
She mentioned one time in one breath that they have, they're not building, but now it's like, well, they have the possibility.
Like, what changed, like, between then and now?
Well, clearly because Trump didn't agree with what she said, and in my view, it's the case.
Probably worried about her job.
I don't know. It just seems a bit odd. It does seem a bit odd. I'm not too sure, but it's just, one thing.
Yeah.
Two things can be true, where it's like they can be at the point of it, enriching uranium and have the potential to build. But are they? And clearly, she had stated originally, no, they're not. So what was the difference here, and what intelligence is indicating otherwise? And that's the trouble, because might as well bring up the elephant in the room, right? The reality here is that the intelligence ain't coming from Europe, Russia, China, or the US. This intelligence that they're getting is coming from Israel. Let's be honest. That's the truth, right? So and at this point in time, you have to also be somewhat, cautious with that intelligence, because
I just want to step in, since we're talking about intelligence, because Trump, on the one hand, said, okay, doesn't trust the director of national intelligence. Then she changed her mind, and then they questioned him on it, and then he says she's wrong. And after the bombing, he said that they destroyed them. But get this, here's some other intelligence, which is very worrying. This is from Reuters, 25th of June.
Yeah, this is what the House Democrats in the Congress are, for instance, criticizing. If it was truly obliterated, right?
Which is also worrying. Like, is this true? Is it not true? Is it false news?
The interesting thing about intelligence is it's kind of an oxymoron, right? Because they say intelligence community and all this stuff, but from what we always know is that it just seems that there aren't that many. It's more more incompetent people within intelligence than intelligent people.
And let's have a look at this just for a second.
A preliminary U.S. intelligence assessment determined that U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities over the weekend only set its nuclear program back by a matter of months. That's according to 3 sources with knowledge of the matter. The classified assessment is at odds with the statements of President Donald Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
So it's kind of worrying, like what's going to come next? If this is like just setting it back for a few months, are they going to go in properly?
Well, this is the trouble, right? It is giving me like PTSD of or flashbacks of like Iraq War. You know, it's like we worked with this intelligence, but the intelligence wasn't exactly accurate, and we only discovered that later that it wasn't exact. It's like and this again is why I say that people are kind of like just weary with all of this, because it's like you can say what you want, but it just feels like no one's being transparent, no one's being direct and straightforward. So anyway, let's get right into like the ramp up of everything. So President Trump announced a complete and total ceasefire between Israel and Iran, and he called it a major diplomatic success. It seemed like, oh my God, everything had turned around. Everybody was like, whoa, okay, what's this? And the announcement was made during a special report segment introduced by Vice President JD Vance. So while the full terms and enforcement details of the agreement hadn't been disclosed, President Trump described it as a historic move toward regional peace. And the news drew global attention, raising hopes for de-escalation in tensions following recent military strikes. So let's break this down, how it all started, right? June 23rd, 2025, President Trump declares a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, effective midnight, right? Eastern time.
Yeah.
June 24th, the next day, early hours, Israel launches high-intensity strikes targeting radar installations, nuclear scientists, and military assets in Tehran. The action follows evidence of Iran launching missiles into Israel just before the ceasefire took effect, when President Trump announced it, right?
Yeah.
Israeli Defense Minister Katz confirmed the IDF had orders to respond forcefully to what was deemed an Iranian breach. Iran reportedly lost at least 1 nuclear scientist and saw damage to radar systems in Tehran. President Trump then criticized Israel, saying further strikes would violate the ceasefire. This is kind of bizarre to me that they're actually like literally launching a missile or something to strike a nuclear scientist. This is like something out of GTA or I don't know what the hell. This is wild in my mind.
A Moonraker.
Like there's a guy like walking, scientists. Every scientist is starting to freak out now. Like, don't go into nuclear science, right? Walking down the street and it's like, woo! Good Lord.
It gives me like flashbacks of like Mossad going into like hotels, like in like civilian clothes and like going in and like taking somebody out and going out.
Right, like
camera footage, proper like James Bond type stuff.
So in summary, on June 24th in the early morning, Israel attacked Iran following a perceived Iranian violation before the ceasefire. And this occurred right after Trump's ceasefire announcement on June the 23rd. But based on what Israel viewed as a breach by Iran just before the official start, Israel contends that the ceasefire had been compromised when Iranian forces launched missiles toward Israeli territory just before the ceasefire was set to take effect. Israel viewed these missile strikes as a direct violation of the agreement, and thus this prompted the retaliatory airstrikes against Iranian.
Wait a second. I'm just going to pause you there. So Israel sees the Iran strike as a violation of the agreement. So that gives Israel like the okay to like.
But the strikes, just to clarify, the Iranian strikes. So the strikes that when Iran launched these strikes at Israel. It was literally right before the public announcement of the ceasefire. So technically, the ceasefire hadn't been declared prior to that.
All right.
So that's the argument. So then Israel saw it was a violation of it and therefore retaliated.
Yeah.
So President Trump was visibly frustrated during a live TV appearance.
Let's have a look at this because I think it's pretty interesting.
This is the uncensored clip from C-SPAN. I had to dig this up because everywhere else.
Oh, yeah.
It's fine. It's fine.
This is like history in the making. A president using the F-bomb.
He's used it in the past. He has used it in the past before.
Oh, yeah?
I don't think so, but I'm not happy that Israel's going out now. There was one rocket that I guess was fired overboard. It was after the time limit, and it missed its target. And now Israel's going out. These guys got to calm down. Ridiculous. I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal.
So although like after the B-2 bombers, like you get Netanyahu like praising Trump and everything, now Trump is like, I'm not happy with either of these guys.
They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either. All I do is play both sides. I'm going now, as you know, to NATO. Some of you are going with me, and I think it's going to be successful. We'll see. I'll let you know.
Are you going to be the agreement?
Because he talks also about CNN and MSNBC, but it's almost there.
Was it this part?
Yeah.
Let me just.
I think it's been completely demolished. I think the reason we're here is because those pilots, those B-2 pilots,
it was here.
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
There.
The F-bomb that went around the world.
So it's crazy because like the States is angry on the side of the Israel.
Yeah.
And
but you know why he's angry, right?
Like he's angry with Israel this time.
No. But he's angry because the way Trump sees this is that it's what we were criticizing about before.
People are like
saying that he wants
countries doing their own things. Yeah.
No, he wants peace through strength, and he wanted to be the peacemaker guy. And now he got that ceasefire, and it was fine. And then it got,
he said it was a time for peace after he dropped the bombs.
Yeah. So this basically shows his frustration over the fragile ceasefire's collapse just hours after being announced. So he's really pissed because now it's like, okay, I just got this like. You should have let me have this, and so now he's annoyed because he's like, you're gonna destroy this, and now you're putting me in a hard place because now I don't know what I'm. So yeah. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei declared on June 26 that Iran will never surrender to the United States, asserting that recent U.S. and Israeli strikes on its nuclear site
hiding, obviously
nothing significant. And in his first public comments since a ceasefire with Israel, he praised Iran's retaliatory missile attack on a U.S. base in Qatar as a slap to America's face. They like to use the slap a lot, I guess, and warned that any future aggression would provoke a heavy response. He also announced that Iran's Parliament and Guardian Council have approved suspending cooperation with the IAEA unless guaranteed safety of its nuclear facilities, reflecting Tehran's increasingly defiant stance and ongoing tension with the West.
I think this guy would be a bit more careful, like especially since Trump says it's a time for peace or ceasefire. He's like,
yeah. I just want to clarify: the IAEA is the International Atomic Energy Agency, which has a headquarters in Austria. But yeah, so Meanwhile, I think should we go into that? I think that's not. I think we go into
okay. Yeah, let's move on.
Meanwhile, Trump, as he was on his way to the NATO Summit, right? And there were a couple of hold on a second. Sorry about that. So there were some key outcomes during the NATO summit. There was the defense spending commitment, so 5% GDP target by 2035. NATO allies agreed to allocate 5% of their GDP to defense and security-related expenditures by 2035. This includes 3.5% for core military spending and 1.5% for areas like cyber defense and infrastructure. There was a progress review, a collective review scheduled for 2029 to assess advancements toward this goal. And then Spain's exemption, because Spain cited economic concerns, therefore was exempted from the 5% target, but agreed to submit a national roadmap detailing its defense spending plans. There was the Article 5 reaffirmation, a commitment to collective defense. Leaders reaffirmed NATO's ironclad commitment to Article 5, emphasizing mutual defense obligations among member states. I guess this is in light of, obviously, to do with like the current escalation in the conflict in Ukraine.
Yes.
And of course, the other things discussed was the support for Ukraine, the continued assistance. NATO allies pledged ongoing support for Ukraine, including contributions to its defense industry, acknowledging Ukraine's security as integral to NATO's own, which, you know, is playing a bit too close to the fire to some degree.
Yes.
And also membership status. This is the issue of contention, right? Because the summit did not advance Ukraine's NATO membership, but underscored its importance to the alliance's security.
Yeah.
At the NATO summit, once again, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban said straight up that NATO shouldn't be involved in Ukraine because Ukraine isn't a member. He kind of is right. He wants to keep it that way. He argued that NATO's job is to protect its own members, not get dragged into wars elsewhere. Orban also downplayed the threat from other foreign powers, saying that NATO is already much stronger, and his comments put him at odds with other NATO leaders who want to keep backing Ukraine. Here we go. We got a short video.
Mr. Prime Minister, are we...
The European Union is able to fulfill 5%, whatever they say. So we have to recalculate everything in a different method. In that case, we can do. Sorry? You like it?
Mr. Orban, isn't it concerning that our global security depends on one man's ego, Donald Trump's?
I don't think so. The international order is more based on common sense. And the President of the United States is a man of the common sense. As you have seen just recently, to manage the conflict between Iran and Israel. So he's the man of common sense. Which means that the new wars getting shorter and the old wars are running out of the fuel, which is
just fast forward.
That's interesting what he mentioned then. He said the new world, the new wars are getting shorter and the old wars are running out of fuel, which is exactly a very interesting point.
The President of the United States is a man of the common sense. As you have
it's
seen
an important
just
point to
recently,
highlight, especially given what we just reported
Iran and
about
Israel. So he's the man of
Zelensky
common
now
sense.
requesting more.
Which means that the new wars getting shorter and the old wars are running out of the fuel, which is the consequence of his activity. Sorry.
Is Putin the biggest threat to Europe?
Biggest threat to Europe? Losing the competitiveness. That's the real threat, not the real threat is not security-wise, it's economic and losing our competitiveness on the global trade. That's our problem.
That EU, the problems, the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, what he's saying right now is very vital.
Yeah.
Because it is economic. It's all about trade. It's all about it's not about security.
A lot, but he does raise a lot of like really good points.
Styles are different in many countries.
Yeah, but this is the thing, because at the end of the day,
Russia will be mentioned as a threat.
well, we can continue playing in a second, but at the end of the day,
in a final statement after the summit.
It's always mentioned like that.
Do you support it?
You know, I think Russia is not strong enough to represent a real threat to us. We are far stronger.
I think he's referring to NATO in this context, obviously.
Yeah.
Not Europe, obviously. But he brings up a valid point, because at the end of the day, this is actually kind of like what President Trump was running on his ticket originally in the first term and even in the second term, which was all about economy. It was all about trade. And why? And even though he was heavily criticized, with everything to do with that, it always boils down to the fact that, look, if you don't have a job market, people aren't going to get employed. People aren't going to be making their money. People aren't being able to find jobs and just meet the means to just their everyday lives. And so that essentially boils down to exactly what he just said. And this is something that Trump has also been, filibustering constantly, campaigning on. So it's interesting that certain people have brought this up continuously. But now we're seeing more and more people refer to like security. And, obviously with security, you also get jobs, as we mentioned, because it will provide jobs. But that's a totally different range altogether.
Yeah, it's like in a different industry for a different purpose. It's a bit worrying, to be honest.
So, again, like this whole thing, unpacking this whole thing is kind of crazy, because so at the NATO Summit, Trump went off on the media again, as he usually does. Especially CNN, his favorite media outlet, calling them fake news and even scum, after reports came out questioning how effective the US strikes on Iran really were, which again, we brought this up earlier. He got particularly fired up at CNN's Natasha Bertrand, demanding she be fired for supposedly disrespecting the military and lying about the mission. I think that's kind of crazy. You don't really have the authority to be fired.
Resorting to asking for people like reporters to be fired, it's a bit extreme.
Yeah, and
even if they're wrong.
Exactly. And when other reporters pushed back, Trump doubled down, saying the media was just trying to make him and the troops look bad. I kind of feel Trump is
defending the B-2 bombers a lot, but
but he's a master of this, where he kind of like intertwines himself with the let's say the pilots, when the issue wasn't the pilots. They weren't contesting.
He's a pilot,
They weren't contesting the pilots, right? The pilot has a job to execute. Now, whether it hasn't the end result that you expect.
But Trump has also mentioned that the news is like these mainstream media outlets are out to get him and not the pilots. He's always
trying to align,
defending them. He's kind of like merging them, but saying we're not they're after me, not them.
I feel like he's using them in a way. It kind of seems like a bit of a shield, because the thing is, if he uses the fact that they're criticizing him, they're criticizing them, and it's like you should never criticize the military. These are people putting their lives on, so it's
putting their lives on the line. Yeah. Let's have it here.
Yes, please go ahead. Oh, fake news, CNN. Oh yeah. Here we go. Wait till you hear this question.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Thank you, sir.
You should really say how great our soldiers and our warriors are.
I think everyone appreciates our soldiers and our warriors. I do have two questions for you, Mr. President. You just cited Israeli intelligence on these attacks. Earlier, you said U.S. intelligence was inconclusive. Are you relying on Israeli intelligence for your assessment of the impact of the strikes?
No, this is also Iran made the statement. And it's also, if you read the document that was given, that Pete can talk about if you'd like, the document said it could be very severe damage, but they didn't take that. They said it could be limited or it could be very severe. They really didn't know, other than to say it could be limited or it could be very, very severe. And you didn't choose to put that because it was very early after. Since then, we've collected additional intelligence. We've also spoken to people who have seen the site. And the site is obliterated, and we think everything nuclear is down there. They didn't take it out. Okay, question?
Anyway, yeah. So
there we go. Also, another thing happened in the NATO Summit, which was apparently Mark Rutte.
So the chief of NATO, right?
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, he's Dutch, right?
So what happened was, so during the summit in The Hague, Trump was comparing ongoing tensions between Israel and Iran to a schoolyard brawl and used blunt, colorful language, right? As he does. And in a lighthearted response, Rutte quipped, "Daddy has to sometimes use strong language to get them to stop," suggesting the US is playing the role of a parental figure. He would later clarify that he wasn't calling Trump daddy, but directly, but using it metaphorically to describe Europe's reliance on American leadership. We've got a contextual video.
So
I think.
What I'd like us to do is to play what came after first, like him being confronted by the reporter, and then afterwards we see what actually happened.
Yeah.
If it's like legit what the reporter is asking.
It's crazy. Like
it's kind of surreal.
Like you can just see the
no,
meme.
first of all this stuff about the intelligence, this is what a leaker is telling you the intelligence says. That's the game these people play. They read it and then they go out and characterize it the way they want it characterized, and they're leakers. This is the game they play. So that's number one. Number two, here's a fact. The conversion facility, which you can't do a nuclear weapon without a conversion facility. We can't even find where it is, where it used to be on the map. You can't even find where it used to be because the whole thing is just blackened out. It's gone.
This is what I wanted.
It's wiped out. Then we dropped 12 of the strong...
He steps in later.
1 second. Yeah.
Okay.
Back white, yeah. White jacket, yeah. Go ahead, give my mic. Hello.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. Mark Rutte, the NATO chief, who is your friend, he called you daddy earlier. Do you regard your NATO allies as kind of children?
No, he likes me. I think he likes me. If he doesn't, I'll let you know. I'll come back and I'll hit him hard, okay? No? He did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy.
Do you regard your NATO allies, though, as kind of like children? And they're obviously listening to you and they're spending more. And you're obviously appreciative of that. But do you hope that actually they're going to be able to defend themselves, defend Europe on their own?
I think they need help a little bit at the beginning, and I think they'll be able to. And I think they're going to remember this day. And this was a big day for NATO. You know, this was a very big day. They took it. One of the gentlemen said, you know what? We've been trying to raise money raise the rate.
He knows that the USA is the bigger player in NATO.
Yeah,
and that they need...
NATO would not exist without the USA. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
That's just the fact. I mean,
but let's have a look at the actual clip now.
This is going to be loads of memes like "Who's your daddy?" You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man.
Let's have a look at the actual clip.
To do papers, I don't even know if you need them. They're not going to be fighting each other. They've had it. They've had a big fight, like two kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes.
Listen to Mark Rutte.
Daddy has to sometimes use strong language.
You have to use strong language. Every once in a while, you have to use a certain word.
Okay, in defense, I could clearly see the metaphor that he's talking about. He's basically saying the parent has to come in, and sometimes has to. It's just wild how this gets so blown out of proportion.
And like the reporter is like taking it a bit extreme.
He wasn't referring to Trump as daddy. It's just whatever.
But to be honest, the USA is the
big daddy,
the big card, like out of NATO. Let's face it.
Oh boy, but yeah. So that was circulating across X and everywhere. And then, interestingly enough, we do have this video where EU leaders struggle to keep it together with the Trump joke. One daddy is enough because this.
Oh, 1 sec. Yeah, I've got it.
So you see, this was just snowballing, obviously. Of course, this makes obviously Trump look good because obviously the White House seized this opportunity to take upon this.
The Donald Daddy Trump joke seems to have legs this morning because A reporter in Brussels has asked the former European Council President Donald Tusk whether, like President Trump, he also sees himself as the daddy.
Just very quickly, Prime Minister Tusk. Yesterday there was a lot of debate about whether or not
one Donald to another.
Donald Trump is the daddy of NATO. Did you feel you were the daddy of this presidency?
Ursula is not happy with that.
Donald, and,
she's really pissed off. She's like, we're a complete laughing stock.
Maybe I will surprise you, but my father's name was also Donald. It's enough, I think. It's one daddy is enough for sure. It's especially with the same name.
So what's interesting here, just so you know, so for instance, in Germany, when Merkel was chancellor, they referred to her as Mutti, meaning like mother. Yeah, like mommy almost, right? And I could just see there that Ursula was like,
I know, I've heard of that as well.
Wait a second, I'm the mother, not this guy, Donald Tusk. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Yeah, but it's just funny. Yeah, they're the big parent. So we want to kind of like, I think we had other stuff to cover, but we might actually, because some of the other stuff was more like cultural and science and stuff. We might cover some of these things, if you like, on Wednesday instead, because they're still topical. But maybe we get into the reaction segment and we take a
sounds good.
A quick. This will be a 5-minute break, and then we come back for the reactions. Is that good?
Yeah,
and then
sure.
We wrap up.
Let's take 5. Okay.
5 minutes more, and we'll be right back. Catch you then.
Catch you then for our reaction. For a break. Give me a sec.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So basically, myself and Edge are going to react to some sort of like viral clips and other things that have been going around, that have been posted. And
I'm looking forward to that. Some are pretty funny.
There is an interesting, also one of an interesting thing that has developed recently. So what is this? Yeah, so we'll look into it, because they're kind of also, some of them are kind of relevant to the topics we covered today. So
cool.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back in 5 minutes.
Yeah. We're back.
We're back.
And we are in our reaction segment now, and we have an assortment of interesting things to cover. What's the first one on our docket here? The JD Vance meme.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this one. So this is a 21-year-old Norwegian tourist named Mads Mikkelsen.
So you know the series Hannibal, or the guy who played the bad guy in one of the James Bond films, I think it was Diamonds.
You mean the actor? Mads Mikkelsen. Yeah. The Danish actor, Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah. He was in...
This is the same guy?
He was Le Chiffre in Casino Royale.
Yeah.
And he played Hannibal in the series.
Right.
And he also played in Rogue One. Star Wars Rogue One.
Okay, so this is about him, right? Okay.
No, it's not. It's about somebody else with his name. A 21-year-old from Denmark. Maybe it's a common name over there. I'm not sure.
Right, okay. And what happened? He was denied entry into the U.S. at Newark Airport after border agents found a meme on his phone mocking President. This is the meme, I presume, right?
Yeah,
the meme of Vice President JD Vance.
I mean, so what? If a 21-year-old has a meme on his phone, what? They're going to take it personally?
That's kind of wild. That's crazy. This is a bit like overstepping the boundaries, I feel, where it's like, okay, the whole purpose. I mean, one of the things that the United States has always championed with is that you had always the right to mock and criticize and make light or make fun of, contrary to maybe some other countries where that is like frowned upon. In fact, the United States even had the ability where you could actually burn the flag, and this is something that even President Trump, I think we discussed about this previously.
Yeah.
But President Trump would like to see that turned around. But that's one of the things about the United States where it was the champion in terms of freedom of expression to that regard.
Like, on the one hand, you have the freedom. On the other hand, they're trying to...
It's becoming a bit authoritarian. This is a bit authoritarian.
Yeah, and especially 9/11, there was the whole, what do they call, like all the security at the airports and everything, and
out of the Patriot Act.
And to the point where it seems a bit intimidating.
I mean, I think this is pushing it a bit too far. Like a meme.
You can't just arrest somebody for having a meme on their phone, and especially against politicians. Like, everybody kind of makes fun of politicians. I hate to say this,
but you should be allowed to, because that is the voice of the people. They satirize
and celebrities. Like, politicians are celebrities essentially as well.
That's kind of crazy. That is kind of crazy. I would say.
Yeah, so they asked him questions about drugs and terrorism, and pressured him into unlocking his phone by threatening fines or jail. After holding him overnight, officials reportedly deported him, despite his explanation that the meme and a photo of a wooden pipe were jokes.
U.S. authorities, however, they said the decision was based on his admission of prior drug use, not the meme. The incident has raised concerns about freedom of speech, digital privacy, and the power of border enforcement. Well, I mean, this is a tricky one where, like, it wouldn't. You need to get a bit more information about this.
What's the full story? Like, they're talking about a pipe, but we don't know anything else about it.
Because
like,
now
it's not illegal to import a pipe, but what was in the pipe?
Maybe there's a case because apparently it's based on his admission of prior drug use. So maybe it's like, oh, is this person?
Maybe they found like a link or something. Who knows?
But
all right,
there's another thing that happened, which is kind of crazy.
Yes.
Maybe you know what that's all about, but catcalling is considered a criminal offense in many European countries because it is seen as a form of street harassment. Yeah. And this involves making unwanted comments, whistles, like the one I just exemplified.
When I hear catcalling, I associate it with like construction workers and a hot woman builders, passing by. But it's a bit like, I don't know, like for our generation, it's a bit dated. Like,
Yeah,
I
I
wouldn't
mean,
want my sister or my mom or like a relative or even like friends being catcalled.
yeah,
I mean, yeah,
it's seen as a form of sexual harassment, usually towards women, mostly in public. And now laws have been made to protect people from feeling unsafe or uncomfortable or threatened when walking in public spaces. I know for a fact from a lot of like female friends that when they were passing by, the construction places and such,
but it's
there
not
were these comments.
places.
They would get comments like, "Oh, you're so beautiful today," and stuff like this. And the thing is, yeah, it may seem harmless enough. You may think so, but it does put off. Like, why do you have to say
Bit
such
weird?
things? But I mean, it is kind of an interesting now case because it's like, wow, we're getting to that stage now that it's becoming a criminal offense to the point.
It is an interesting topic. Like, I don't know, like if future generations or women would like accuse guys of like not reacting to them.
I mean, the thing is, it goes both ways.
It's
in
probably
some
better.
ways.
I wouldn't defend like catcalling.
No, I don't think it should be, but it's just another form of kind of like what we talked about, like having a form of social decorum or etiquette. And unfortunately, not everybody does have that because they lack the education or they lack, the upbringing. Or
yes.
And the thing is, like,
it's important to have manners and to be courteous, right? Like to be kind and not.
But that's something that is more of a societal thing that you're brought up with, that you are, educated with.
It's something people should be educated with, not let's say from schools, but maybe from their own households, like from their parents.
But also, it's by example too. I feel, you know what I mean, and
what groups they are. Like they shouldn't feel like because your peers or something do it that you have to do it as well.
But the question is, where does this end, right? Because it may not end with just catcalling, and this is where you can get into like murky waters. Because the thing is, what about? I mean, in some places,
or like women being approached in the wrong way or something like that.
No, I was referring to other things, like for instance, other forms of social decorum that people don't do. But no, things like, for instance, what if someone needs to go? So I know for a fact, for instance, that in certain places, I think in the United States, you can get penalized, fined for taking a leak on the side of the road or something like that, if you really need to. Most other places, it's like it's turn the blind eye type of thing. Like, no, as long as it's not like visibly, But in the United States, it's seen as indecent exposure, right?
Yeah, completely.
And this is what I'm saying. What levels are we taking this to? Where like, okay, you have somebody who may say something because they're a bit drunken, or someone does something that is not really threatening, but like, and it's
what level is it? Like where do you draw the line on this? Like it has to be addressed in some way, but again, it has to be done properly.
Yeah. So apparently in France, catcalling is a criminal offense, and it was introduced in 2018. And it was a law.
I don't know why I'm just guessing that it happened a lot over there. I don't know.
Yeah, from the French.
Allez, what do you buy?
So this targets behavior such as wolf whistling, which is what I did, lewd comments following someone, and the penalties. It's a fine of up to 750 euros. Okay. Whereas in the Netherlands, catcalling is criminalized in certain cities like Rotterdam and nationally since January of 2024. And the penalties are fines of up to 8,700 euros or 3 months imprisonment.
3 months. Wow.
Belgium.
Jeez.
In Belgium, it has been criminalized since 2014. Penalties are fines and potential prison time as well. In Spain, there is the only yes means yes law, which passed in 2022, which broadens the definition of sexual harassment, and catcalling could be prosecuted if it constitutes unwanted sexual attention or creates a hostile environment. In Portugal, since 2015, it criminalized sexual harassment, including public places. And while not all catcalling leads to prosecution, offensive or intimidating remarks may qualify if they affect the victim's dignity or sense of safety. So in summary, it's been it's a criminal offense in the countries that we mentioned, and other countries may treat catcalling as a civil offense or not criminalize it directly, but may prosecute it under broader sexual harassment laws. So it's interesting how now certain things are falling in line with this. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, it does seem to be the case that it is generally in other countries, particularly like the United States of America and other places, where the where this happens a lot more, especially in social environments like bars or clubs, or as you mentioned as well, sometimes on the street at a construction yard,
where everybody's drinking more and stuff. Or even
I don't know.
Even if it's being used within friends or something, somebody else, like a third party, might take it wrong or film it. Or
I don't know where I stand on it personally. I do think it is kind of, we just talked about how it's...
I personally don't catcall.
No, me neither. Like, I agree with you. I agree with you on that position where I think it's like you should set the example and you should be respectful when you're out in public and set a standard. But at the same time, I don't know if this is like maybe pushing the boundaries a bit, and I don't know what will come of it, but it'll be interesting nonetheless.
I know, well, to be honest, as a guy, like how I feel about it personally is that I think guys catcall maybe from a distance because they don't have the guts to like approach a woman and talk to her properly. But it just depends, I guess. Everybody's different.
So, what's next on here? Okay, so this is an interesting video I thought we could react to because it's a video which is, what is the biggest threat to every NATO country? Since we discussed
Let's have a look. Oh, let me just put the volume on.
This guy. I asked one person from every NATO country this question. So, what do you think is the biggest threat to your country? And here are their answers from smallest to biggest country.
Foreign influence right now.
Russian influence.
Perhaps Russia is threatening the bloc that Luxembourg is part of, but actually between the two countries they have decent relations. So, Luxembourg is friends with most people.
I'm from Estonia, but currently living in Finland. Estonia and Finland are neighbors with Russia. And this is the biggest threat.
I would say the problematic thing is the veto from Bulgaria in our accession into the EU.
Anti-European or pro-Russian sentiment.
The war Russia in Ukraine, this is actually affecting all of us. So
I think corruption. I also believe corruption is a very big problem in our country.
There's many threats, but I think that time is one of the biggest threats, as we still need to do a lot in order to prepare for a future and emerging threats.
I think the biggest threat is for sure Russia, and I think the biggest threat is the way that they're manipulating the media and the news.
The war that's on Ukraine that Russia started.
Especially in the psychological misinformation warfare by Russia.
Obviously the proximity to Russia is a bit worrying.
Of course, Russian aggression.
Що ви вважаєте найбільшою загрозою для вашої країни?
Росія. Звичайно, що це існування Росії.
Російської пропаганди.
Unfortunately, we do have a lot of influence from Russia and Turkey and the US, and unfortunately the society is a little bit more polarized than it should be.
I think it's the country itself, the government.
I would say Russia again because of the attacks, but also Turkey.
Turkey?
Probably our neighbors, Turkey. Sometimes attacking Greece territories.
I think currently, like to all European countries, it's probably Russia. Like the answer is obvious.
Actually, it's Russian interference.
I would say probably misinformation.
The biggest threat in Sweden, I would say Russia.
If anyone has ever watched the series that just came out, Adolescence, I think the effect of the algorithm on Instagram, for example, how that affects young children.
Russia and the
the first person who actually brings up a valid one, because everyone else
like
is
search engines and
which is actually true.
Stuff.
That is actually a very good. It's the first one that actually hit close to me, where I was just like, yes, that is very true. Everyone else is just repeating, like, it's almost like they're reading off the script.
Yeah,
they're at the NATO Summit,
regurgitating like everything. Some countries have they're worried about neighbors, but not like any neighbors. It's usually Turkey or.
It makes you think, though, with all these security councils like NATO, whatever. Like, this is what I'm saying. It's only fostering more suspicion, more paranoia. And where are actually the councils of cooperation? Where are the councils of, working alongside neighbors and trying to find more diplomatic, avenues? This is what's lacking right now. It's no wonder that everybody's talking about this, because that's the hot topic, right? So it's Russia, and it's like, to what degree are you saying it's the biggest threat? Like, and this is the thing where I feel it's freaking out people.
What about some introspective as well? Like, what about within?
You mentioned something valid, because you said, like, they're all talking about misinformation, propaganda, and sure enough, that could be true. But what about the stuff coming out from within? Because let's be honest, everyone's wearing the black hat. Nobody's white hat here. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like, come on, like. It's a bit rich to be claiming that that's the threat, and this is
what's pretty interesting is that there are like NATO members within that are calling out like neighboring countries within NATO.
Like Turkey, yeah, exactly.
And
there you
like,
go.
What kind of an alliance is that if like the members are against each other?
The thing is, it could be, there is an obvious case to be said where, okay, due to certain infractions, certain things involving, certain covert operations or certain interferences or invasions or whatever you may want to call it, fine. But on a grander scale, it's taking something and building it up to be so much more, where this is what is actually causing most people then to panic and freak out about, because they see this constantly. And then they think, oh my God, this is going to be a scenario of like an invading force. And
but isn't it weird, like how, like the media and everything, and like how everybody like thinks alike?
Well, because that's their program. It's kind of like a program, right? It's almost like predictive programming. Oh, well, but it was just interesting to hear that one point that person talked about the algorithm, which I thought was quite valid. It's the one person who actually probably gets what's really going on. And if you dig in deeper with that, then you would actually start seeing the real threat is not coming from like, a great power or another potential power that is developing, like Turkey, for instance.
To be honest, that's concerning, like for the future, like search engines and
definitely
AI, Palantir, and stuff like that.
If there's one narrative, if there's one nation, regime, or country which is very, very adept with that, let it be known it's China, and they're really ruling the roost on that one, but nobody's pointing that out. Like, no, because we do trade. They're the biggest trade partners for most people. So
they make everything. They make your phone.
There you go.
Everything.
There you go. All right. So this is kind of a crazy case. I don't know if there's a video.
It is.
But it's a tweet, and a 39-year-old British man convicted of prior sexual offenses and known to be on the UK sex offender register was arrested in France after staging a shocking mock wedding at Disneyland's Paris on June the 21st. That was just like a couple of days ago. Posing as the groom and using a false Latvian identity, he paid over 130,000 euros to rent park space outside opening hours and hired around 100 extras for the ceremony, only for the staff to spot a 9-year-old Ukrainian girl dressed as the bride and flagged the event. So French prosecutors have charged him with fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and face a preliminary investigation into corruption of a minor. His alleged accomplices, including the child's mother, good Lord, were also detained. Authorities confirmed the child was unharmed, but the man remains in custody as evidence continues to emerge. So this is crazy. The fact that this even was allowed to happen.
Can I just pause you for a second? I just want to say this is completely fucked up. Okay, there. I said it.
Yeah.
So
no, but this is
I don't
wild.
want to swear, but like this is.
Oh no, we can swear. It's fine. We don't have
This
advertisers.
This is like a messed up story. Like we talk about war and stuff, but you get this psycho like situation, like wanting to marry this 9-year-old at Disneyland, and not only that, they have like he pays off like 100 people as guests, and the mother was there.
That's my curiosity here.
Insane.
My curiosity on this what I find fascinating is how this was even allowed to begin with.
In Disneyland.
Right. I mean, that doesn't look too good on Disney right now. They're letting you know, because they've been targeted already. They've had scandals, mind you. I think it was a previous producer or something.
Goodness.
It was a massive scandal. Like, this is wild. And what's more interesting is that the girl was from Ukraine. And it's interesting because previously we were going to wait because we wanted to actually expand on this topic a bit further. It's required a bit more research that we have to do. This is a very tricky topic. But what was interesting is that BBC. Oh, here's the video. Look at this. This is crazy. It's
100 guests for an alleged pretend wedding ceremony.
Pretend.
Employees didn't know in advance that the bride was a 9-year-old girl.
Okay,
and
those were the
quickly
extras.
shut it down.
Okay.
What do you mean?
So the extras,
pretend?
they didn't know.
Like,
they didn't know.
Like, even if you get married, like in Vegas, it's real, right? Or was this like
yeah,
for
because
film?
it
wasn't for film.
No, but the actors are like the extras. They were paid to
He's
appear.
known as a PDF file.
Yeah. I mean,
Crazy.
This is just wild how not enough is. But what's interesting is that we have this BBC article, it's a bit old, right? But it's in relation to how a lot of Ukrainian children have actually gone missing. And it's believed that they have been, funneled into child trafficking into, within Europe and such. And what's even more shocking, and this is what we were going to explore more, but I will just highlight it a little, is that in many cases, what most people don't recognize, in many cases, especially in, places that have a very strong element of this occurring, continuously, like child trafficking, sex trafficking, etc., like countries like Ukraine, okay? In many cases, the parent or the guardian is intrinsically connected to this, okay, in these networks, in this whole process. So it's not surprising. And there's actually, we're not going to link it or refer to it right now, because hopefully we can refer to it later. But there has actually been a kind of a documented video about this from I believe it was a Polish director, who's literally charting the process of how some mothers are even selling their unborn babies into this thing. It's, as people don't want to believe it, it's crazy, but it happens because
it is horrible.
Life is cheap. Life is cheap, especially in places when you're impoverished or in areas where you're not, especially from a lot of these Eastern Bloc countries.
Yeah.
And they don't care. They don't care. They just want to get rid of it and make money, right?
In the previous example, okay, we had a guy who wanted to marry this 9-year-old in Disneyland or something. But in the rest of the world, okay, human trafficking is outright bad. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah, it's the worst.
But also what is concerning are kids put up for adoption and things. And in a lot of countries, there are waiting lists and procedures and everything like that. But I think I think the demand exceeds the supply of people. I hate to put it in those terms because we're talking about human beings, but it's a very concerning issue.
There is unfortunately a historical case to be made against a lot of social services when it comes to child protection, because they tend, not all, but in many cases, like you just brought up, when it comes to particularly, I think it's not necessarily adoption, it's but the foster process, fostering children with social services. And there have been so many cases of the child was handed over to a family that was abusive, and this whole thing, and it's just horrific. Anyway, moving on to something a bit different.
I just want to highlight in this article, I know it's from 2022,
March,
but still, the amount of numbers of kids that they're talking about. Hang on, I just highlighted it. It said something like U.S. U.S. military veterans were helping to organize safe passage for the estimated 200,000 children in Ukraine's orphanages and foster homes.
Foster homes, there you go. That's the key word.
200,000.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot of kids. It's not just one or two.
And this isn't even
hell of a lot.
unpacking the harsh reality of
absolutely.
in Europe itself, like how many over continental Europe of children go missing or are involved in this, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So let's there's an interesting thing I looked up. This is from Gossip Goblin. It's a video short, but I thought it was quite
You
interesting.
sacrificed your minds for pleasure. You clamped machines to your skulls and boiled your thoughts to a pulp. You flooded your senses to escape the unbearable weight of being. You gorged on distraction, on praise, on spectacle, until nothing real could reach you. You were a planet drunk on stimulation, a billion howling faces, an endless chorus of need and noise echoing across a dying world. You butchered memory, you disfigured truth, you clawed at your screens for a flicker of euphoria. You yelped for more and thanked your captors for feeding you. Your minds rotted in the glow
It reminds
of
me a bit of
endless
the Matrix,
stimuli.
like being
Then
plugged
the
in.
warnings came.
But these
The
teeth on
power
these like
failed. The drones broke formation
Android
and
half
the
people, half
systems
robots.
blinked red. But you mistook threat for theater. The collapse arrived, and you cheered for the pageantry. In the end, there was no scream, just a final flash, followed by the silence you tried so hard to bury.
Spider.
I have to laugh because I mean it's dark, but the
Yeah.
thing is, right? It's like
Ugh.
what we presented in the case of our video with social media affecting people, and it's not only social media; it's technology, the rapid advancement
is.
of technology, as we see with AI and everything,
Yeah.
and how this is.
And
It's effectively it's having adverse effects on our own organic evolution, our own
Absolutely.
societal evolution. It's just and the thing is, that's the other thing. Everything that's stated in there, even as dramatic as it is actually presenting a case that is true. This is what we're seeing,
And it's pretty shocking, like how dependent everything is on technology and the internet and everything. Like even like taxes, your email and stuff, you need your phone like for authentication and all these passwords and like this digital stuff, like even with like governments and everything going online and like if you don't have internet, if you don't have your phone, if you don't have like certain things, then you can't like operate in society. They kind of need you to have these things, and people end up like thinking that they need these things to operate. It's like go outside, touch some grass, leave your phone, put your phone in your pocket when you go to a concert instead of like recording the whole thing.
It's interesting because the video talks about how the world becomes dependent. I think I don't know the exact words anymore, but it was something about let me just find it. Yeah, you were a planet drunk on stimulation, and yet you are becoming your own version of a simulation because everything now is simulated to the next step.
It's like what Elon said, like we're in a simulation, but we're actually manifesting it.
Yeah. So
Freaky.
in real, this is an interesting one.
It's
you
just
brought
from
this one up.
yesterday, actually.
It's crazy. So this is about a rare tornado hitting Largo, Florida.
Have you seen this?
No. This is you brought this one up, so that's.
Isn't Largo where Trump has like some golf courses?
No. The building, the place he has there is called Mar-a-Lago.
Okay, it's the building. But yeah, this is in Florida. Let's have a look.
So what? But Mar-a-Lago is in Palm Beach. This is a different. I don't know where Largo is.
It's in Florida.
No, I know, but like I'm trying to find out like where exactly.
This out. Check all these pieces out. It's just like lifting up like houses. I know a lot of houses over there aren't like proper houses. They're kind of pre-made. But like check out all these pieces in the sky.
So Largo is to the west of Tampa. It's like the little edge off of Florida on the west coast.
Let's have a look at the beginning again.
Crazy. Oh my god. Look at a tornado. Wow. I tell you.
This other house.
This is the problem though in living in these places, like that are.
And you know what? Like if you're outside, you have to fend for yourself because a piece of whatever can like hit you.
So it was reported that this was a relatively weak EF1 tornado with winds up to 90 miles per hour, or basically 145 kilometers per hour. But it still tore, like as we were saying, tore off the roofs.
There wasn't a warning for this.
There wasn't, or there was?
There wasn't. People weren't ready for this.
This is again, no surprise. This is again, the same story.
Yeah, we have another link. Oh, it's the same one. But yeah.
Fortunately, despite the damage, there were no serious injuries, and many residents, as you mentioned, were caught off guard because there was no tornado warning beforehand. But that's good. At least there were no casualties.
Yeah, it's something like from
this
the
is
start
crazy.
of The Wizard of Oz. Like you're just looking at all these,
pretty
like,
much.
pieces, before Dorothy.
Lord,
Oz,
look
black
at
and
that.
white.
That's just crazy. That is crazy. I'm glad that nobody got caught up in that. That's just terrible. The damage alone is just going to be crippling. Like it's just nuts.
Imagine having this house and then having nothing to come back to.
This is a problem with a lot of like natural disasters. Like there's not enough. Here's another thing, right? I don't feel there's being enough invested in like assisting or supporting in these cases.
Yeah,
I have to say I give a lot of respect for Japan, because when Japan's ever had natural disaster, wow, they are very quick to like build it up and sort it out.
Fix everything.
But the US unfortunately has a real bad track record when these things happen. Where Katrina, the LA,
Katrina floods.
I was trying to mention the fires, right? In LA.
Oh yeah, LA.
Yeah. And it's just
California.
Damn. Right, and in our last clip.
All right, let's have a look at this.
This is short Trump body double. What? Is this for real? Why Donald Trump looks shorter in photos as president sparks body double conspiracy theory? Like what? Okay, so please tell me a little bit about this. What are we looking at?
All right, so Trump went to NATO.
Yeah.
In a lot of photos and stuff, Trump is actually pretty tall, right?
Yeah.
So Trump,
he's
1.9 m, which is 6 feet 4 inches.
Okay,
he's 193 centimeters. So
that's pretty tall. Like he's pretty tall.
He's really tall.
Yeah,
he's a tall guy. So a lot of people are accusing certain politicians to have body doubles and stuff, and they're saying that here he looks shorter to other people.
I mean, there is a case to be made that is true to some extent. They have maybe not exact body doubles, but for instance, like the Secret Service will mask somebody as to look like Donald Trump and also Melania. They do have this.
I saw another one on Melania, but I wasn't too sure about that. People in the comments were kind of supporting it, but I was
but this is a real thing. It's a real thing the Secret Service does. This actually was reported on in the past, where they actually showed where you could see they do exist. Literally every leader in the world, they have it's for their own security for certain things. So they sometimes do have these body doubles.
Would they replace them in some instances, or give them training to go to places while they're doing something else?
It's usually Secret Service people who are trained, and to make them look like the person. So they'll find someone as close as possible, and then they and usually it's in relation to particular situations.
And you think they would train them in the mannerisms as well?
I would expect they do, because this is something that
it was magnificent.
I would say
anything in the world.
I would say they probably trained them to the extent of more like their body movement or whatever like this. But the main thing is
body
just
language.
they're supposed to be decoys, basically. That's the idea.
To be honest, they have a lot of like, what do you call it? A lot of information they can find online, like if they needed to copy something.
But yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if he's really that short or if it's just the case that Mark Rutte. I mean, how tall is Mark Rutte? That's Mark Rutte over there, right?
Yeah, he's pretty tall as well, I think. Let me have a look.
Yeah, like I think it's just the case that there are actually some other world leaders that are tall, because the problem is everybody's seen Trump standing.
In fact, Mark Rutte is the same height as Trump normally.
Oh, there you go. And Trump does tend to have this type of hunch now lately, so it's reducing his size. Have you noticed? He does have a bit of a hunch.
Could be. And people also shrink, don't they, when they get older?
Yeah. And don't forget that don't forget that they've mostly seen Trump alongside very, short world leaders like Zelensky or Macron or others like that. So it's no wonder that people have always been like, oh,
Yeah. And also like, oh, never mind.
What?
No, like the article is just saying that Melania Trump was also like accused of having a body double as well.
I mean, I would say yes, they do, because it would be part of the process of Secret Service, like I said. But it's interesting nonetheless that this is brought up. But I don't think they actually have a body double act. I mean, that's when you go down the conspiracy rabbit hole, right? Where they have these people and they say like with Joe Biden, they were saying like that's a different Joe Biden from that Joe Biden. It is this, for what I can legitimately state, right, or what we can legitimately report on, because it has been stated, right? It is factual that Secret Service for a lot of world leaders, like even the king of Saudi Arabia, even the royal family as well, they do have decoys. They have these people who are trained, military, whatever, and they would dress up in the same colors, the suit. They look more or less, but not identical. And it's more about like using them as decoys in particular situations. You know what I'm saying? But as for like replica body double type thing, then there's the argument about cloning.
Over here, who's taller, Erdogan or Trump?
Hard to say, because Trump is slouching and he's already like, he's kind of like shifting to the left. So
because Google is saying that Erdogan is 1.85 meters, whereas they say Trump is 1.93.
You have to also wonder, because people know how tall Trump is, so maybe they're also wearing platforms in their shoes too. Do that too.
For the picture.
Well, Tom Cruise does that because he's short. So. Anyway, so I guess that comes to the end of our end stream for today, and we want to thank everyone for tuning into the end stream. Don't forget,
pleasure, as always.
Don't forget, we'll be streaming every Friday from now on, 5 p.m. Central European time, and we'll be starting another end stream hopefully on Wednesday, 5 p.m. Central European time. That'll be more chilled. It's more myself and Edge just talking off the rails, what we want to talk about. Actually, we might even cover some things that we didn't get to cover in this docket. And we're planning on having video uploads, whether they're clips or actual video uploads, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, 6 p.m. Central European time. And we expect this will start in the following week. We're organizing also hopefully a full-time editor and clipper to help us, because we're a small team, myself and Edge, just developing all of this ourselves.
Everything, like just ourselves, and it's been pretty intense.
This is why we've had a bit of shifts and changes, and also like why we have been a bit delayed in releasing some of our main videos. But that's because we want to put the effort and
we want to do them properly, for sure. Like we don't want like half-ass things.
So don't forget to stay updated. Join our Discord community, and don't forget to click the notification bell on YouTube if you're on there. Follow us on Rumble too if you can, or Kick, where we stream as well. We also upload to Rumble. And help us out by trying to make a difference in the new media sphere by joining our other social media accounts, where we'll be more active on as well, and following us on all the other platforms. Okay, there's another one. We keep getting messages, and I wonder if like some of them are bots or not. I don't know. I never know. Like, you know, that's the thing. So yeah, and I guess with that, we bring it to an end. And I guess wishing everybody a good weekend, a relaxed weekend. Hopefully nothing breaks out. And this was the End TV.
Take care.